Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. I'm your co-host Jamie, pronouns she, they.
And I'm your co-host Spencer, pronouns they, them.
And this is Pixel Therapy.
Hi.
It's our last Patreon shout out.
Oh
For now anyway. Who knows what the future will bring, but for now, we have retired the program, and so this is it, folks. The final Patreon shout out to everyone who subscribed at our Patreon name in the credits tier for the month of May. A very, very big thank you to Lindsay, Pimhatai, CD Mess, Ava, and Alexis. And that crew right there has been with us for quite some time. Thank you all so much for your support of the podcast, your support of us. It's so appreciated. And yeah, we'll see you on the other side. I don't know.
We're not going anywhere.
I know we're not going anywhere. I don't know. It's the end of an era. I have no idea what I'll start the podcast with in the future. We're evolving. That sounds scary.
We'll just do a nice greeting to everybody.
Okay.
There you go.
We'll see.
Workshop that.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. As a reminder, if you're clueless as to what the heck we're talking about here, we have done away with the exclusive benefits for paid Patreon subscribers and have deactivated new paid subscriptions to our Patreon page for the time being. So if you still have a paid subscription, first of all, thank you. And second of all, please feel encouraged to go edit your membership to a free one. We really don't mind. For everyone else, please come subscribe to us for free on Patreon. It's the best way to find all of our podcast streams and written thoughts. Just go to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod to stay up to date on all things Pixel Therapy. If you're looking for other ways to support the show, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. And be sure to check out and subscribe to the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@pixeltherapypod, where we'll continue to post live recordings of all of our episodes. And of course, after all that, know that no matter how you choose to engage with us, we appreciate you being here all the same. All right.
We've just broken down the ivory paywall.
Yeah.
We're of the for and of the people. We're a people's podcast.
Yes, that's us. That's us, all right. The People's Podcast. All right, it's time to get cozy. Pull up an armchair. Feel free to lie down on the couch, and let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, how are you this lovely Sunday afternoon?
I'm great. I had something I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, tell me.
Prepare yourself.
Okay.
Okay. So literally, I saw that Game Informer is coming back, the print magazine that was sunsetted years ago.
Yep. Okay.
That's
the one that you could always get in GameStop, right?
Yes, you could get it in GameStop.
Well, no, but I mean, like, is that the one that is GameStop's magazine?
Wait, is it? Is Game Informer owned by GameStop?
GameStop discontinued it after 33 years in August of 2024. So yes, it was previously owned by GameStop.
Okay. But now it's not.
Now it's coming back. Okay.
They have new ownership.
Okay.
By this company called a gaming publisher called Gunzilla Games, who rehired the original team, which is pretty cool.
Oh, I did hear about this. Yes. Very cool.
And now they're restarting the print and digital subscription, and the whole team came back. Anyway, I got so excited that I got both of us subscriptions.
Wow.
So if you hate Game Informer, sorry, you're going to receive 10 issues over the course of the next 12 months.
I don't hate it. That's very nice of you. Thank you.
Also, Gunzilla has promised them that they're going to be independent. So I'm hoping that bodes well for the future of print and games journalism.
Yeah, me too. Oh, jeez. Yeah. Well, that's in dire straits. We're going to talk about more of that in the second here. And actually, you've given me a great tee up. Was there anything else you want to say about Game Informer, or was that was the whole?
That's it.
Well, thank you for that subscription. I'm excited that we're supporting them, and I do hope that Gunzilla stays out of their shit and that this is successful and that they stick around, because state of games media is fucking bleak out here, folks. And that brings us to the tie-in of the first thing I wanna talk about today, which
Yeah.
is, we are in the midst of Summer Game Fest. What used
Woo!
to be E3 week, the, fucking video game Christmas, this,
Mm,
first week of the summer where there's a bunch of conferences. There used to be big expo, E3 people would go and play a bunch of games all weekend. It's a huge, big deal. E3 died a very, slow and sad death, within the last few years, and now we're just down to, we have what Jeff Keighley is trying to spin up as kind of the replacement for E3, which is Summer
mm,
Game Fest, which is kind of a mix of, digital showcases. There's opportunities for press to come and play games, and he kicks off the weekend with a big, fucking 2-hour live event game showcase. It's honestly, the more callous view of all of this is it's a bunch of marketing, right? It's just a bunch of marketing, get people hype about games coming out in the next 1 to 2 years. But it used to be, a really big thing. I've, for many years, gotten excited about this,
mm.
week, and, I watch a lot of the showcases and write down a bunch of games and add stuff to my wish lists and all of that. Just kind of fun to be excited about what's coming. Uh, and there has been a lot of stuff. I'll go through a list here in a minute of a lot of games that I saw over the last few days that I'm really excited to play when they come out. But the actual Summer Game Fest showcase on Friday was a big, boring letdown for the most part.
No.
Out of 2 hours of showcase, I wrote down less than 10 games that looked
Yikes.
interesting, and some of them
Yeah.
were games I'd seen other places. It felt super everything kinda looked the same. It just yeah, it was kind of a bummer,
Mm.
overall. And, I'd say my feelings have been pretty well summed up by Luke Plunkett over at Aftermath. He wrote a really good article, or it's a blog actually, called "We're Really Just Going Through with All This, Aren't We?"
Jeez.
Uh, and, he says early in the blog post, "As the AAA market contracts towards a singular exploitative point and the wider market grows ever reliant on a mass of vulnerable independent developers starved of both funding and support, the servings of big games that used to fill these announcement shows grow ever thinner." He goes on in the blog post to kinda talk about just how the vibes are off this year, how it
Mm,
feels like we're kind of just everything's barreling forward, and trying to make it look like it's looked in years past, but it's this weird mix of the quote unquote AAA games industry showing a lot of stuff that looks really similar to each other. And then you get
mm,
these cool little one person made this little game that's got a personality, and there's nothing in between to pad it out. And it's just starting to, you can kind of see the edges of it all fraying.
mm.
Even though it feels I think at one point in the blog post, or maybe it was a different article I read now, I apologize, I don't remember exactly, but someone was comparing it to, the band playing on the Titanic.
Oh,
It's we're
jeez.
acting like everything's fine and
Yeah,
normal as the ship
yeah,
sinks around us.
yeah.
But Luke had one more, quote here in his blog post, um, talking about the vibes. He says, "The vibes also feel a little off because of what's happened to the media," as we were just alluding to, or what's left of it. E3
Mm,
used to be partly about the big stage events, yeah, but it was also about the days of subsequent coverage from outlets jostling to get their hands on the latest blockbusters and interview the big names from the big games, passing along these harried impressions and juicy quotes as free marketing. As empty calorie as that coverage was, it still contributed to the overall structure of a week like this, as well as serving as a focal point for so much of the community's excitement. In 2025, what little media there is left in this age of layoffs, closures, sales, and an advertising marketing market collapse will play a few things here and talk to a few people there. This coverage will take the same basic shape as it always has, only now in a greatly reduced form. And yeah, I
oof.
think, the coolest thing about participating in this week in years past has been reading all the articles that came out afterwards and following some of my favorite creators online and seeing what they think of the games, watching showcases that are being co-streamed by someone that I like, and hearing their take on things as it goes. And I don't know, it's just the energy is down
Mm,
this year, and I'm sure a lot of that comes down to there just being fewer people in the games media to even cover these topics. And so those folks get stretched thin, the work itself is stretched thin, and yeah. you're starting to see what I think is gonna be I don't know, I don't wanna be dire, like, I don't think the
Yeah, yeah,
games
yeah.
games industry isn't going to collapse, but it is
Mhm,
dramatically changing,
mhm.
before our eyes, and a lot of it the depressing part is that a lot of these changes are happening because of, like, Wall Street and the influence of investors in the
Mm,
games landscape,
mhm.
and the amount of layoffs and everything that have been
Yeah.
happening. So, that's the sad part.
Absolutely. It takes a toll.
It really does.
It's
Uh,
tragic because some of the coolest games, even the indie games that continue to come out are some of the most I mean, the first one that comes to mind is, like, Balatro
mhm,
last year, which just won a BAFTA for, like,
yeah,
best, sorry, I'm forgetting now, a video game, I think.
I can give you a quick Google search. The best video game. Balatro BAFTA. Uh, no, that's not helpful. Which one did it win? Google is so useless.
Thanks,
Um,
AI.
best debut game?
Ah, okay. Best debut game.
I think it
Yes.
won best debut game.
And, Ben Starr, who delivered the acceptance speech on behalf of Local Thunk, who's the developer, he ended his, short acceptance speech by saying indie games are the lifeblood of this industry, and it's, like, so true. So it
Yeah.
just hurts to see how many like, in terms of return on investment, if I was an investor, I would think, "Huh, this is a lot cheaper to make and only needs a few people to do. If we just let them do their thing and be creative and make stuff, look at how many people want to play that." And
Well,
yet
what you're referring to actually is something that I was potentially gonna bring up later in the episode because I think it touches a little bit on our main topic today, which
Mm,
is gonna be Clair Obscur Expedition 33 as well, but, the industry is actually experiencing, what's been called a, deprofessionalization. Have you heard this?
mm.
This
I have
was
not.
I heard this coined in an article that came out around PAX East a few weeks back. It's called "The Deprofessionalization of Video Games" was on full display at PAX East, written by Bryant Francis for game developer.
Mm,
And the term was coined by Ryan K. Rigney, who's an A16Z marketing partner. And he defines it as deprofessionalization is a phenomenon driven by the overperformance of older titles, particularly
mm,
free to play live service games, large studios struggling to drive sales, and the outsized success of some solo developers and small teams. These three forces, he argues, will combine to, quote, drive career professionals from the traditional professionalized side of the games industry. Um,
mm,
basically, the argument is that yeah, you've got your big AAA blockbusters, the studios wanna play it really safe with those types of games. Those are the studios that have hundreds of people that they're employing. The number of those studios is ever dwindling. Like, these are the places that
mm,
we're seeing suffer extreme layoffs, a lot of studio closures, stuff like that. They're gonna be boiled down to just remaking the same fucking shit over and over again because that's the quote "safe bet." And then you've got the little solo developers, teams of 1 to 3. So a lot of Bryant Francis's article is about being at PAX East and seeing this, like, there's either, like, the biggest there's either Call of Duty or you've got he's walking the show floor, all this space is taken up by these small developers, but he started talking to people and he was like, 1 to 3. Like, 3 people was, like, the most he heard any of these teams saying were working on the game. And he's
wow.
talking about, like, how unsustainable this is in terms of, like, actually having an industry that people can go into and find
Mm,
consistent work in.
mhm,
Um, he another quote from the article, he says, "I wanna be clear here, no one I spoke with at PAX East should feel obligated to give anyone a job. They're small teams making the most of limited resources, and it's the acceleration in game development technology that's made it possible. What
mm,
feels wrong is how few people seem to benefit from this status quo." And then closes the piece saying, "One shouldn't need to be a social media wonderkin, a AAA
mm,
veteran with years of hard to earn experience, or a jack of all trades to have a career in game development. That path does bring us some wildly inventive games, but leaves us with a community of developers hustling on gig work to keep their dream alive."
mm,
So a lot of those very small developers, they're outsourcing some of that other stuff that they can't do.
yeah.
When you have a 3-person team, you you're not hiring writers. Like, in the article, he talks about some of the careers that are just, like, fucking going away, and it's like writers and artists, like, people
Mhm.
aren't doing just that anymore. They're doing that and, like, 6 other things. Like, the creative director of the game is also the writer because it's one
Mhm.
person's clear vision, and I love a lot of those smaller games that come out, but when that's the environment that we're in, that investors will only fund a game like that
Yeah.
or Call of Duty,
Yeah.
there's, like, so many jobs are just gone
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
then
it's
you're
not doing much for crunch culture either, this idea that,
yeah.
as long as we don't sleep or eat or have a personal life for, like,
Yeah,
3 to 5 years, then, like, we can have our dream game. It's like this idea that you have to give up every semblance of a balanced life in order to create this thing that may or may not take off, like, I mean, I of course deeply respect the level of dedication and vision and genius involved in any game that is made truly. And
mhm,
also it's like, but why? Especially in a culture that more and more is leaning into online or digital forms of entertainment. I mean, we have the technology now to do incredible things. So if anything, you'd think the game industry would be growing, especially with the rise of VR and the fact that everyone has a supercomputer in their hands. Like you would think that the games
and,
industry would
like,
be exploding.
in some metrics, it is, like, we have more games that we have access to now than ever before. Every year, my wish list of stuff that I wanna
Yeah.
play is
Yeah.
bigger than the year before. There's almost at this point, it's like there's too much for us to even possibly engage with, and yet it's consistently being made by fewer and fewer people.
Yeah.
And that's what's and that's this is not just a games industry problem, right? It's like this is kind of the side effect of all of this stuff fucking late stage capitalism that we're doing. We have
Mhm.
more on offer than we could ever even possibly need. And yet the people that's actually providing sustainable like employment and life structures for is the number of those people is dwindling as all the money gets hoovered up to the top of the pyramid. So you dubbed this a podcast for the people. Let's start
Let's talk about
planning
it.
the rebellion right now.
Yes, let's do it.
Anyway,
So
all that
speaking of
said,
your growing wish list,
yeah,
was there
speaking of my growing
anything?
wish list, yeah, there's a handful of games I wanted to highlight because I say I still love video games and there were several video games I saw this weekend that I'm really excited for that I want to shout out on the podcast. So real quick, just running through the list. We got a release date for Everdeep Aurora,
Woohoo!
July 10th. It's coming so soon. This is a game that you and I got to play at PAX
Mhm.
West last year and really liked. He plays a little cat character who's exploring a city on a planet that's about to be hit with a like meteor and destroyed, and you're trying to find your mom, and it's a really cool little adventure game. um, I saw this game called Please Watch the Artwork, which is
Mm,
a psychological thriller without jump scares. The developer
love
made a
that.
point to point out. Yes, I also love that. And you work as a night surveillance guard at the museum, but the paintings are alive. And so you're
Huh.
like, everything's like through like a security video cam, and you're like zooming
Mm,
in on the paintings and like watching them move around and stuff, and then keeping track of things. It kind of reminded me of like a Five Nights at Freddy's sort of
mm,
deal, but with painting and, all the paintings are real paintings, that the developer is working with, so that seemed really cool.
nice.
Um, there's this game called Consume Me that comes out in September. In the description of it, it says, "Did you feel stupid, fat, lazy, and ugly in high school? Well, I did, but at least I made a life simulation RPG about it."
Oh my
Uh,
god, I need to
and
look this up.
it's got a really cool art style. It's kind of got that, like, cutout paper shapes, sort of art style, like, really flat 2D
Oh my
look
god,
to
this
it.
looks
And it looks
amazing.
like a game where it's, like, kinda made up of a bunch of different mini games, and it's meant to kinda be about how overwhelming life feels when you're a teenager, and everything feels like it's a tough decision, while
Mhm,
also seemingly, kind of working through, like, body issues and just, like,
mm,
feeling like you're not good enough, and, just looks like it's gonna be a really insightful, fun little, teenagerhood sucks kind of video game.
mm.
In a slightly similar vein, there's this game, Lily's World XD, that's one of those things I love where, like, the game itself looks like you're on an old computer. as you're interfacing with it. And this is another psychological horror game where you're investigating a young girl's computer, and the description says channel your inner 2000s teen as you read her old conversations, customize her blog, and look through her embarrassing selfies. That is until you find messages addressed to you. Dot dot dot.
Ruh-roh.
But yeah, it like very MySpace vibes
Mm.
going through and kind of
Love a early
editing these. Yeah,
2000s
yeah.
desktop sim.
I'm all for it. Let me revisit that horrible time in my life. Sword of the Sea comes out on August 19th. This is the new game from the folks, I believe they're called Giant Squid. They're the makers of The Pathless, makers of
Mm,
Abzu. It's the developer who originally who worked on Journey.
mm.
If you go all the way back, I really love The Pathless that they put out a couple years ago. Really excited for Sword of the Sea. It definitely has more Journey vibes. Most of it seems to be kind of set in a desert, but you ride a sword like it's a hoverboard.
Nice.
And yeah, they do movement really well in those games and scale. Like you're usually like a fairly small character moving through really big environments, and uh, yeah, just a very emotional experience. The Fair devs have a new game coming at
Oh,
Fate's
shit.
End. This is coming next year, 2026. It's a 2D action adventure game where you quote fight the ones you love and your skill tree is your family. This
What?
one looks really cool. Looks like there's some cards involved in the battle mechanics. Really neat, kind of flat 2D art style. Really excited for this one. Spiritfarer devs actually they have a game in early release right now called 33 Immortals that is a multiplayer game, and I was so excited when they announced that and then saw it was multiplayer and got less excited, and so I'm really excited that they're making another single player game because that's more of what I want from them, and this one looks like it's gonna be cool. Uh,
Sick.
we saw Aphelion, which is the next game from Don't Nod, coming in 2026. It's specifically from the team that worked on Banishers, which was a game I really loved. It definitely had its flaws, but really liked Banishers. This one is about an astronaut stranded on a frozen planet trying to rescue her wounded partner. So, kind of seems like it has some of the like it's exploring a relationship a bit, kind of like
Mm.
Banishers was. It just looked really cool. The trailer was really cool. We got a new trailer for Mixtape, which is still coming in
Nice, nice.
2025 according to the trailer. I wish they'd put a date on that one. I really want to see that game this year, but that's a like adventure game where you play as some friends in high school who are also no, I don't think they are in a band, but it's got kind of like that, coming of age. It looks like it's like set in like the 90s.
Mm,
Great soundtrack. There's like Smashing Pumpkins, Portishead, the
nice.
whole list of music and it looks great. Definitely look that trailer up. That game is absolutely my shit. We got confirmation Persona 4 Revival coming, not sure when. They didn't put a date on it, but it looked great what they showed. And now I don't have to try to make time to play Persona 4. I'm just going to wait for that to come out.
Yeah,
And while I
true.
wait, while I wait for Persona 4, I'm going to check out Demon School this summer, which is kind of like a pixel art Persona game. I think
Nice.
you're in college in Demon School, but you play as a group of friends for like managing your day-to-day activities, your calendar, your schoolwork, and all of that, and then going and fighting demons at night in like turn-based battles. That one looks really fucking cool. And then finally, they announced a few sequels that I'm really excited for. We're gonna get a follow-up to Lego Builder's Journey. This is like
Oh,
ray
right. Mhm.
traced, like super detailed, realistic looking Legos, like puzzle adventure game. Voyagers is gonna be a two-player co-op version of that. Just
Mm.
the look and feel and sound of those games is so cool. If you like Legos at all, you gotta check out Lego Builder's Journey and then put Voyagers on your wish list. Escape Academy is getting a sequel called Back to School, the number 2.
Escape.
This
Nice.
is the one it's an escape room game. Like,
Mm.
it's just a series of escape room puzzles, and you do them, set in, like, this kinda, like, visual novel-esque world, this silly premise of, like, this is a college that people go to where they just learn how to do escape rooms and become master
Oh
escape
my god.
artists. But really, really fun, clever puzzle game. I'm so excited we're getting a sequel to that. And then we got a Toem 2 announcement. Toem's a little
Oh, nice, yeah.
black and white, hand drawn, art style, like photography game. photography adventure game of you're just a little person on a journey and you take pictures as collectibles, and yeah, they're making a follow-up to that, so looks really
Sick.
cool. And that's it. That's all that I
Nice. I
wanted to highlight,
mean,
except it's
wow.
not, 'cause
What?
I also got to do a little preview of Herdling.
Oh, yes, that's right, yes.
Your
I
guess?
forgot about that.
You
'Cause I was like, "But wait, there's more?"
Yeah, I'm just laughing because you have the doc in front of you, but
I know, I but in my defense, the hurdling preview is under
yes,
the page break.
it's a s okay, yeah, okay. Understood, understood, alright. I can still surprise Spencer.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Hurling was a game that you and I previewed at PAX West, 2024, and I recently got to participate in a developer-led preview of the game and got early access to the demo that actually publicly launched on Steam yesterday, Saturday, as a tie-in to Herdling's trailer appearing in the Future Games Showcase. Uh, if you don't recall, Herdling's a game where you play as a young shepherd leading a herd of big fuzzy creatures called calicorns on a beautiful journey that begins in grim city alleyways, but ultimately takes you across lush valleys, dangerous forest passages, and eventually into the mountains.
Did they give you a release date?
No, they didn't give me a
Okay.
release date, unfortunately, and the trailer did not give a release date either. Although they are still saying 2025, so it is still expected
Okay.
this year. Hopefully, we'll get an exact release date soon. But some things that I learned about the game over the course of the developer-led preview and the hands-on demo, which again you can play that demo yourself if you're interested. It is available for everybody now. But some new stuff that I wanted to highlight for everyone about the game that's new from what we saw when we previewed it at PAX West. They've added a visual line element in the game to make the direction that you're steering the animals more clear. For folks that don't recall, in this game, you're a lot of times you're behind the herd and you're steering them from behind towards things ahead of you. And I know when you and I played it at PAX, one of our concerns was that it was a little tough to tell where you were steering the animals. So they've added a
Mhm.
little it's like a yeah, it's just a little, like, glowing line with a little pool around it that shows up, like, just a little icon in front of you so you can kinda see where it is that you're actually sending the animals as you steer them. That was a really nice addition. Um,
Nice.
they showed off a lot of customization of and interactions with the calicorns. You're gonna be able to name them. You can put in a custom
Oh,
name,
shit.
or it's got a random name generator of a bunch of names they've plugged in. You can pet them, you can feed them, you can find little decorations in the world that you can hang on them,
Aw.
like on their horns. You can play with them, and you can clean them. So, lots to do.
Love that. It's like
And as
Nintendogs.
yeah, except with, like, these, like, sheep yak creatures. Um, when you're out in the world, you find these, like, little camp bases where you make camp with them, and they all snuggle up, and you call them into the you, like, build a fire, and you call them into the fire, and they all snuggle up, and you
Aw.
guys sleep for the night together. It's very cute. The game's gonna have some light puzzle elements, as each calicorn that you find in the world is gonna be kind of in a unique situation that you have to navigate and resolve to be able to add them to your herd. There's a couple that I saw in the demo. There was one that was injured, and I had to find some fruit and feed it to him so that he would feel better, and then he would get up and follow me. There was another one that was kind of hiding under a train car,
Mm.
and I had found one that was hiding earlier in the demo and realized that I needed to bring another calicorn over to the hidden one, and that would kind of lure him out, and he would feel more comfortable coming over to me. So I tried that, and that didn't work. Kind of realized I had some fruit, and he started coming out when I had the fruit, but then when I just stood there and held it, he wouldn't come up to me to get the fruit, so I found I had to, like, set the fruit down, walk away from it, and then he would come out and eat the fruit, and then I could go over and pet him. So, little stuff like that just to make the animals feel more realistic, and they all kind of have their own unique personalities. And they also showed that, they're adding, like there's or not adding, but there's kinda dangerous areas in the game, parts of the game where you'll move through where you have to be a little bit quieter, you have to kinda time how you're moving through the area in certain ways. There's these
Mm.
large owls, and, like, when I say large, they're, like, bigger than the calicorns, like, huge, scary
Oh,
owl
wow, okay.
birds, and they will, like,
Yeah.
swoop down and attack the herd. So your
No!
calicorns can get injured. I don't know if they can die,
Uh,
but I would bet they probably can.
ugh,
Um, yeah.
no.
So there's gonna be an element of danger and concern there. Um, I definitely still have some concerns, after getting more hands-on time with the game about, potential difficulty or frustration with the navigation mechanics. It's just not like it just doesn't feel the best to be behind the herd and to be leading them.
Mm,
I don't think it's a failing of, like, the actual development of the game. I think that would be the case no matter how well it's developed, like, being
mm,
positioned behind the herd makes it a little bit tricky. Um, and they move like animals, so sometimes they don't go exactly where you want them to go. So I think if you're trying to do
mhm,
anything precise, I could see it getting a little frustrating. That said, though, some of those decisions really kind of remind me of things like if you played The Last Guardian, which was all about like befriending and taming this giant
mm,
cat dog bird thing.
mhm.
And that was the thing a lot of people complained about that game, like, "Oh, it's imprecise, like, I can't get him to go exactly where I want, I'm not reading his body language right, and he's not doing what I think he should be doing." Yeah, that's what it's like to be around an animal. Sometimes
True
they just
that.
do their own thing. And I guess, like, you'll have that question of like, "Oh, is this bad game design, or is it just being an animal?" I don't know,
Right.
but I'm kind of into that. I kinda like when games explore this a bit and have you pair up with an animal and the animal isn't just something that totally lacks autonomy and does whatever you tell it to do exactly the way you
Mm,
tell it to do it. Calicorns feel like real creatures, and so there's going to be imperfection that comes with that in the way they behave, and I'm into that. I like that. I'm okay with that maybe not always feeling perfect.
yeah,
Um
more people should experience a complete and total lack of control every once in a while.
yeah, it's good for you. It's good for you. Um, Getting to have some, like, hands-on time with this demo at home has only enhanced my excitement for it.
Aw, nice.
Um, I think there's a big difference between playing this on a crowded, packed show floor while my
Mm,
feet are, like, killing me,
mhm.
and I'm standing in a booth, like, sweating and my feet hurt, and I'm eating, like, 8, Advil to try to maintain. Um, so, yeah, getting to play this at home in
It's a
the
lot
comfort of
like
my
herding, like, in that's like it's immersive.
Yeah, it was very immersive. No, it was a much better experience playing at home, and, it really allowed me to feel like, just the swell of the music, the way it feels to be, like,
Mm,
running through the field with the herd as in that first scene as you move from the city into the field and the music swells, and it's just like, I can really see, like, the emotional vibes that this game's gonna
yeah,
hit, and just how neat it feels to be, like, running with your animals or, like, really understanding the reactions that the animals are having to different things in the environment. I think there's a lot of little detail here that feels really good. So, I'm excited. It got me more excited for this one. Definitely gonna check it out
yay.
when it
That was
comes.
definitely one of my standouts, I mean, like, still in my mind from PAX East, so I'm really excited
Yeah.
that you got to play more of it.
Awesome. Awesome. And for the record, they did invite Spencer too, but Spencer had to go to Japan.
I know, sucks for me.
All right. Let's move into our main topic. Are you ready to do that?
I believe so,
You
ready as
believe
I'll ever
so?
be.
Ready as you'll ever be? That's pretty ready, I think. Today we're talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Heard of it?
No.
Um, I believe that you have. Clair Obscur is a turn-based RPG with real-time mechanics from French development studio Sandfall Interactive. The game takes clear inspiration from Japanese role-playing games such as the Final Fantasy series and Elden Ring in all aspects of its design and mechanics. Set in a lavish, dark fantasy world ruled by an entity called the Paintress, players lead a team of Expedition 33 members across the wilds of the realm on a mission to end the Paintress's tyranny. Because every year, the Paintress paints an ever decreasing number on her giant monolith that can be seen across the land, and everyone older than the number painted disappears in an annual event known as the Gamage. So every year, the city of Lumiere sends out another expedition made up primarily of citizens in their final year of life before they gamage to continue to carve a path forward into the unknown, bringing them one step closer for those who come after.
Mm,
Spencer, you have played and beaten Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
I have.
Tell me, what did you think of it? How long have you played it? What are you playing on? All that good stuff.
I played it on PS5. This is a beautifully designed game about killing your dad, which Gotta do sometimes, I guess. I played about 35 hours, maybe closer to 40, like, I should have checked right before 'cause I was playing a little bit this morning, but, like
Mhm,
36, I think.
mhm. So you're still playing.
Um, a little bit. I think, I'm definitely not someone who, tries to platinum, and, like, the stuff
Mhm,
that there is to do after you defeat the main story is largely, like, more and more difficult battles, and I'm not really someone who's in a game just to fight. It becomes, like, very Elden
mm,
Ring-esque,
mhm.
in the end game, like, you're just kinda traveling around encountering bosses and having to learn more and ever complicated parry patterns. Like, that's not typically my idea of a good time, but
Mhm,
there were some, kind of missing story pieces I wanted to fill in, so I've been kinda jaunting around, just not quite ready to say goodbye to my little homies. But it's funny, I started as kind of a hater, like, I kept seeing all this stuff online, like, "Game of the year? Clair Obscur, it's happening," and I was like, "What? Okay, come on, like, what is this?" And then I turned it on, and
So
it was
before you
like
even turned it on, you're like, "Nah."
I'm like, you're not gonna tell me what game of the year is, I'm gonna tell you, world Reddit." And then, I turned the game on and I realized that there were quick time events snuck into my role playing or my turn-based strategy
Mhm,
RPG, and I was
mhm.
even more
Oh
incensed.
boy.
Um, but, it turned it all around for me, but I think the writing is one of the strongest aspects of this game for me.
Mhm.
Um, and by the end, I was on the edge of my seat. My partner, who had, also taken in all of this story because I was taking over the living room couch to play for almost 40 hours,
Uh-huh.
was also on the edge of his seat. It was so good there at the end that he had to put his phone down, and he was just,
Ooh,
like,
wow.
locked in, like,
Yeah.
"Wait, what? That's what's happening? You're gonna make that choice?" So, we were we were hooked, but I'll say more about that later.
Yeah. Yeah, we are gonna try to have a mostly spoiler-free conversation, for at least a while, and then we'll say really explicitly when we're going into spoilers, but I know from texting that Spencer
Mhm.
definitely wants to talk spoilers, because this game's got a hell of an ending.
Plus, it has Robert Pattinson in it.
Except it doesn't. Except it definitely doesn't. Yeah, I need the developers to comment on this, but the main character of Clair Obscur, look it up if you have not seen it. His name is Gustav. Gustav looks like Robert Pattinson. He looks exactly like Robert Pattinson.
Exactly.
I don't know how anybody could say different or pretend they don't see it, but he looks just like Robert Pattinson, and yet Robert Pattinson had nothing to do with this video game. In fact, Gustav is voiced by Charlie Cox, who's another pretty well-known actor. If anybody watches Daredevil, he plays Matt Murdock on the Daredevil shows.
He's the
Loved
Daredevil.
he is the Daredevil.
Spoilers.
I don't think it's spoilers. You pretty much find out right away that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. It's not like it's not really that's the thing with secret identities. It's like we all know. Like they're not surprising us, the readers. It's secret that they're anyway. Charlie Cox is a great actor. There's plenty of moments, someone who's familiar with Charlie Cox's work, when I'm watching Gustav in scenes, I
Mm,
see Charlie Cox's micro expressions on Gustav's face, but the face is Robert
yeah.
Pattinson's face. Maybe I don't know, I don't wanna come for the developers here. I don't know if they were trying to make it look like Charlie Cox or
Who can say?
if something else happened there. Maybe they were really trying to get RPATs for the role and just didn't come
Like,
together,
damn it.
and
Yeah.
they had to just move forward with anyway, it is
Anyway.
really funny that Gustav looks like, Robert Pattinson. I also feel like I probably shouldn't call Gustav the main character of the game because really you can, even when you're, like, running around third person, in the game, you can change who's, like, the character that you're playing as, so really you could say any of the core team
True.
are main characters in the way the game positions itself, but anyway, neither here nor there. I really like this game. I've also beaten the main story. I've played in probably like the mid 50s hours. I forgot to look at my game clock, but the last time I did it was reading 2 days. So I think where I finished out, I'm probably around 54, 55 hours. I played on Xbox because the game is on Game Pass, if that's a thing that you have or that interests you. And yeah, I really like the game as well. I like the world design. I like, you know, the narrative is like for all the inspiration that this game takes from Japanese role-playing games, this feels like a very Japanese, like, anime kinda esque present
True.
like, a setup as well. The story being, like, you know, this, like, dark fantasy setting where, oh, the paintress paints an age on the thing and everybody above that age dies. I was kinda trying to figure out the actual mechanic of that, like, how are people only dying on the Gamage day? Like, there's a bunch of people that die on the Gamage. It's like when you hit like like people don't all they're not all we're not all born on the same day is what I'm getting at. So, like, this idea
Right.
that, like, everybody on the expedition has 1 year of life left, but, like, no, they don't. What if your birthday is, like, 3 days after Gamage day, and so everybody gets all sad, people Gamage, and then
Mm.
3 days later, you just Gamage. Like, are you going on the expedition? I don't know, I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but there's
That's
something about that premise that
true.
didn't totally make sense. I'm on board with it, like, it's
You know, it's
fine.
funny because my partner and I had a similar argument because he said
Okay.
the same thing. Like, he was
Yeah.
like, "Wait a minute, I don't understand. Like, not everyone's born this," and I was like, "Ah, just."
Just be
I was
quiet.
I was hand waving it. I was like, "I'm sure it's just anyone who's like that age and above is Gamage, so no one under that age." But you're right. Like, what
But,
if you
like
were born the day after, but you're
yeah, so,
still
like,
like,
you're 33, right? Like, the game starts the very first day that takes place in the game is, the monolith currently says 34, and it's the Gamage day, like, in quotes, which is, the paintress is gonna paint a new number in the sky, but she's been painting just 1 number down every year, like, really consistently. So just like but when she does it, like, a ton of people die, and, like, Gamage, they basically, like, end game turn to dust.
Yeah,
But I feel
for all
like
you Marvel
probably
fans out there.
yeah, for all you Marvel fans, I'm assuming there's a cross section of the audience. Anyway, but I really don't know, would that many people really poof that day? Because wouldn't they have been poofing like, they've been poofing all year. They'd have been dusting all year.
Well, I think it's just that I think it's I think they're not it's not that, like, 30 you're 33, like, you can turn 34 before the Gamage day, but then on that Gamage day, because you're 34, you'll be poofed. That's my interpretation of the logic of this world.
Yeah, sure, I guess it's just everybody who was turning 35 throughout the whole year would have already been poofed, so it's only people who, like, somewhat recently turned 34. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know if it totally, like, makes sense that, like, all these people are you know, unless
The
people are
math
really,
isn't mathing,
really timing out
Sandfall.
their pregnancies, like, really trying to line it up. It does seem like people leaving on the expedition, they would be constantly like, every, you know, couple of weeks, somebody new would be gamaging because it's their birthday and now they're too old. It's for me, what's confusing me is, like, the annual nature of this gamage event
Mm,
as, like, the central fixture in everybody's lives, and yet I would think people would kinda just be constantly gamaging on, like, a rolling basis. Anyway, it's neither
mm.
here nor there. I have totally lost the plot. I'm so sorry, everyone, for this horrifying detour that we just took into this tiny, obscure, like, piece of this
Ah,
game, before we have even prefaced it or really talked about it at all. That's not the main thing that I wanted to
thanks to
talk about.
those of you who are still here.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. That was just to weed out the fake fans. Now we're gonna get
Exactly.
into the real meat of this game. No, but I really like the game. I like the mechanics actually. I think the turn-based combo with the parry and the dodge really worked for
Mm,
me. You know, I'm not
uh,
the biggest Souls-like player. Parrying and dodging is not necessarily something I gravitate towards in games, but I can and will do it when you twist my arm. And this game twisted my arm, and I actually ended up having a lot of fun with it. Was I always good at it? Absolutely fucking not. But I managed to strong arm my way through in other ways. And when you do nail the parry,
Mm,
yeah, so the thing with that is
feels
that with the
good.
game mechanic is like, yeah, each turn you're picking your move that you're gonna do, like your attack move or whatever it is. When you use your ability with your teammate, a quick time event plays with a little like dial, and you have to hit the button within that dial in order to execute the move. So you first have quick time mechanics there, like that. Then when the enemy attacks you, you have one button that's dodge, and dodges have a slightly more generous window.
Mm,
You can time a dodge not exactly perfectly and still like manage to dodge the attack, but there's no benefit to dodging besides you avoid the attack. um, if you dodge right at the last second and basically hit the timing window of a parry, but you didn't parry, you dodged, you get what's called a perfect dodge. That again doesn't have any extra benefit
mhm,
besides the attack not hitting you. If you parry, which requires like a very precise timing window, the same as a perfect dodge, but it's all or nothing. You either hit the parry perfectly or you don't, and you're going to still
mm,
get hit and take damage. But if you successfully parry, you get an extra action point, which is what you spend to be able to use actions on your turn. And if you parry all the moves in an attack, you do a counter attack, which often does a good chunk of damage. So there's
hell
a
yeah,
lot of incentive to parrying, um, but it's pretty hard to do. But it's very risk reward, like
yeah,
parry usually is in games.
yeah. I did
S-
something I really appreciated was the fact that you can, because of this point system where every time you either do a just so that you have a base attack, which is just hitting with your weapon,
mhm.
I guess like a magical attack, I don't or action, which is typically something like in the form of a spell or some kind of
Is that your
weapon.
skills? You have
Your
skills.
skills, sorry, you
Yeah.
have
No.
skills, that are unique to each character.
Hmm.
Um, you need action points to execute skills, as Jamie was talking about, and you get action points by either parrying or doing a base attack. But I really appreciate it. Like, I think one of the things that gets irksome about like a Persona game, for example, which is also turn based, is the fact that like if you run out of like typically these games you have an HP bar and like a MP or like kind of like your magic points or mana points bar, and eventually you run out, and it's like kind of a management of trying to get through enough battles before your characters get too tired and you can't replenish these points unless you find something like a rest stop or a save point or something where you can get that back, or you have to have a bunch of items to get that energy back. I liked how in this game, like each fight was kind of singular. Like you could continue the flow of battle indefinitely, and really you have all the resources you need to defeat any enemy. It may take you like an hour if you're super under leveled, but if you're hitting those parries, you could conceivably like keep going forever, which I don't know. It
Hmm.
was a small thing that I really like. Like I didn't feel like I had to be dependent on items or stuck in menus, which is what I typically would be doing in a game like this where I'm, like, digging through trying to find buffs or items that I would need to deploy in battle.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. There's a couple other like things that the game does in that regard too that make it I would say more streamlined and maybe well efficient is kind of the same as
Mm.
streamlined. Let's just say streamlined than a typical turn-based RPG. Uh one of the other things that they do that I really liked was the way they handle your I guess you would call them like are they, what do they call them? Hints?
Oh,
The
Pictos and,
No, sorry, I'm
um
talking about, like, your revival tint it's a tint,
oh, the
right?
tints,
Yeah,
yes.
revival tint just, like, as I was
I don't
saying
know
tint, I was like, "This word seems wrong."
this can't be it.
I don't know why they're called tints, but revival tint, you've got a revival tint that, like, reses someone after they die in a fight, you've got a healing tint that heals them a certain amount of their health, and you've got a I can't remember the 3rd one's called, but it basically gives somebody an infusion of action points. They're like potions, basically. Uh, in a lot of role-playing games like this, you would be finding those resources out in the world and stockpiling them and then using them in your fights, or if you're like me, you stockpile them and then never use them because who knows when you might need them.
Mhm.
Certainly not now. It's not a good time. I'm never touching them. What I like that this game does is that you actually are not finding tints out in the world at all. They are automatically refilled whenever you get to a checkpoint. There's
Mhm.
expedition flags throughout the game that you locate, and anytime you come to an expedition flag, you can rest, and resting refills everybody's health and refills all of your tints. And so you're because that's not like it's a very easily renewable resource. I was actually willing to use the tints in battle
Yeah.
because I knew pretty easily, like, I can go back to that flag I saw a little bit ago if I need to, or I've got X number of tints left. I think I'm gonna probably be fine until I get to the next flag. I can go ahead and use these. And there wasn't that constant fear that I was gonna use a really great resource and then need it down the road. So I actually really appreciated that kind of simplification that they added to the game, made me
Yeah.
actually use my fucking potions. Um, on the
Maybe they're
downs
called sorry.
what are they called? No, please tell me, because
No,
tint
I was just
sounds fucking
thinking maybe
stupid.
they're called tints
Oh,
because, like, you add tints to paint to create
mm.
different colors.
Yeah,
So
that's
and the
probably it.
and the potions are in these, like, little bottle maybe they're called tints because it's, like, the whole theme of, like,
Yeah.
painting.
Yeah, the game has a lot of theme of painting. There's or not there's side characters, but there's like a race of people in the game called gestrels that are
Mhm.
paintbrushes. They're
Yeah.
paintbrush people. They're
And
like
they're like the wooden those little
mhm.
wooden mannequins you use in art school to, like, make sure you're drawing a figure in the right way, like, there's
Yep.
those little positionable guys,
Yep. Yep.
plus a brush.
Plus a
Also,
brush head.
sorry, while we're on this, I have to
Yeah. The
mention,
painting world. Yeah.
I was literally like the name of the game, Clair Obscur, I was like, "Why does this sound so familiar?" And then I Googled it, and Clair Obscur is the French version of the um, Italian word chiaroscuro, which if you went to art school, is, a painting style that specifically includes elements of light and shadow and the interplay between both.
Oh.
So I was like, "Oh, okay." It
Yeah.
all fell into
They were
place.
kinda on one when it comes to, like, those themes. They were definitely yeah, they were getting in their bag for those.
They really
Um,
were.
to continue the chaos of this conversation, I
Yeah.
do wanna circle back real quickly to the fighting mechanics because I do have a complaint about these as well.
Okay.
Like, as
Yeah.
much as, like, it worked for me and I enjoyed myself and that was a lot of fun, I think it's distressing in the year 2025 that there's, like, no accessibility settings around the parry
Mm,
mechanics.
mm,
Thank you very
yeah,
much.
true.
Like, I don't know, it's become relatively common in games that have like the Souls games aside, I wish the Souls games would do this too. They don't,
Mhm.
but just it's the Jedi games do this really well. Jedi Fallen Order,
Yes,
and Jedi Survivor.
they do.
They have like a really detailed set of sliders that you can set on the timing of the parry and how you want it to work for you. And just put that in the game. Just put that in the game.
Mhm.
If you don't need that setting, if you wanna play it on the hardest hard mode that there ever was and you're super hardcore, then go do that, but, like, just put that in the game. I don't even think I personally would have used it, but I think it's a necessary accessible ability setting that should be included in this game. I also
Yes.
I don't think there was any, like, accessibility options in general in this were not great. I don't know how much you
Mhm.
poked around in the menu, but there were
Yeah, no,
definitely
I
times I was having trouble reading text on the
yeah.
screen,
Mhm.
the character upgrade menus and stuff. I wanna talk more about, like, actually what's in those menus in a second, but just opening the menu, incredibly overwhelming, so
Mhm.
much text, and no way to make it any bigger.
Yeah,
None.
agreed.
Um, just yeah, some real basic stuff there
Like
that should just be included in every game.
like, I don't know, this I think, y you know, accessibility is ease of use in general. There's different layers of accessibility laddering up and down depending on the person's need. I also think it's an accessibility issue that I got through like half the game and didn't realize that there was an entire menu mechanic for applying certain upgrades and understanding how different items were used or even how to get to them. Like, that's a baseline accessibility issue of, like,
Yep.
me not being able to understand how to navigate fully through a menu.
Yeah, the
So,
the
like, definitely
tutorialization
hear you there.
yeah, the tutorialization blows by pretty quick. It's almost all
Yeah.
text-based. And when it comes to, like so each of your party members in the game, which is this is something I think is really cool, each of the party members in the game has a very different, like,
Mhm.
style
Yep.
completely. Like, they all have these different synergies within their character of things you can do to help like, the way their skills stack, I think is probably the best way to say it.
Mhm.
Like, as you unlock, you gain skill points and you spend skill points and you build out from your skill tree, and the way those skills interact with each other can have dramatic impacts on the way the fight goes. And yet, you only get 1 option for a tutorial fight when each character is introduced to you to learn how that character plays. And as you go through the fight, they just pepper you with these little info boxes of information in the tiniest font that there could ever possibly be, explaining to you how this all works. And it very explicitly tells you when that pops up, it's like, do you wanna do this tutorial fight now? You'll never have a chance to see it
Yeah, it's
again.
like, this is your
It's
only
like
chance.
it's like, "Okay, well, I'll do it now, but also it'd be great if I could just fucking find this information in a
Yeah.
menu somewhere, because in
Yeah.
10 hours, when I actually have started to understand how this character works,
Yep.
it might be helpful for me to re-reference that tutorial." Yeah, there's some decisions made there that are a little head scratchy.
Yeah.
And also, like, some of that stuff makes the conversation around game of the year for me
Mhm.
land a little flat because I'm like,
Mhm.
there's a lot we're really setting to the side here when we're talking about
Mhm.
this game. And like everybody has stuff that's like it's not a 10 out of 10, but you love it like it is. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Like we all have those games. I do as well. But yeah, I don't know. I was a little like, really? We're gonna talk about this game this way when there's a lot of pretty basic stuff that I feel like we've kind of agreed is good to have in your games that they just totally left off the table.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I completely agree that game of the year should be setting a standard for excellence at every level, including the pieces that, you know, some people see as non-negotiable, some people see as negotiable and able to be overlooked. Like, I absolutely am bought into the idea that the game of the year should be bringing renewed focus to the aspects of games that some people don't appreciate and that make that game playable by anyone and everyone. Like, if a certain subset of people are inherently locked out of having that experience, then that to me is not eligible for game of the year. I love that you said that. I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it does kind of come down to how you define game of the year because I guess what I'm talking about is like the game that's going to win at the Game Awards is really explicitly. I think somebody could absolutely come out of 2025 and say, Clair Obscur was my favorite game I played in 2025. Like, that's valid. You're allowed to think it's your favorite game that you played in 2025. And
Well,
you're
there is
allowed.
no woke, so that makes it good.
Oh my God. Oh my God. um, Like,
Sorry.
I'm just saying, like, you're allowed to say this is your favorite game of the year, even if it's imperfect, even if it misses the mark on
Mhm,
accessibility challenges. But I I don't know, I just think if it's gonna actually win awards for being X, Y, or Z, then it should be really truly, like, setting a standard for that. It's like when, The Last of Us won, like, a Best Directors award after we knew that there was a ton of crunch at the studio. It's like, well, is
mhm.
that great game direction if your team had to crunch like fucking crazy to make this happen? I feel like it's not. Anyway, that's just a thought that I have.
Mhm.
What else do we wanna talk about? I guess I can use that to spin into the other thing I wanted to harp on a little bit,
Yeah,
if
great.
you'll allow me to continue to gripe a bit. I did really like this game, but I have
We
some
swear, we
feelings.
loved it.
I have some feelings. Another thing that's kinda was getting spun up about this game was like, "Oh my god, it was made by only 30 people, like,
Mm,
what a
mm,
small
mhm,
team to make
mhm,
such a game that looks so, I don't know, quote unquote professional, so triple
mhm.
A." The game is gorgeous. Not slighting the game at
Ugh,
all in that regard, like, it
yeah.
looks great, it feels great to play.
Mhm.
Like, on every level, the design is, I think, really top notch.
Yeah.
it's got the whole world is these, like, really hyper detailed, like, textures on everything. Everything has this really
Mhm.
ornate kind of like, when you're in buildings and, like, in the town and stuff, it all feels, like, really
It's
ornate
beautiful.
and really
Mhm.
specific to the is it kind of like a Baroque setting?
Oh,
Maybe? I was trying to figure out
yeah,
what the, like, correct term is for
um,
this aesthetic.
I had Belle Époque, which was a period in France, what 1 second.
Dispense you with the
Um,
history lesson, history and art
um
lessons.
It was like, kind of in the late 1800s to the early 1900s that happened after, a big period of war. It was called the Franco-Prussian War, and basically after this period, it was a huge time for, there was lots of prosperity, lots of investment in the arts, lots of investment in culture. I think it led to, like, they call it that's called the Beautiful Age in France,
Mhm.
but what's that art style, in the early '20s? Art Nouveau, it kind of, like, created that whole style of art and just was a
Okay.
big defining period in French art history and cultural history. The
Thank
end.
you. Thank you for that. No, that's really helpful because I don't know any of that shit. Um, yeah, so, the design of it on that level is great. It's got these beautiful, like, orchestral
Mm.
this beautiful orchestral score, like, that also sometimes is very, I don't know, like, infuses, like, almost techno, like, kinda dance, like, house
Yeah, there was
elements
some
in
really
it.
cool
Like, you'll
yeah,
go into a
really
fight
cool
and it's just like,
soundtrack.
"Oh, shit, this is a banger. We're,
Yeah.
like we're going now."
Are there, like,
Um
drums going sometimes? I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah, it's
Okay."
intense, it's beautiful, it's clearly well written, all of that, so I'm not trying to take anything away from the design of the game, which I think is great, but what does bother me is the narrative of, "Oh my god, this game was made by only 30 people."
Mhm,
There's a really I'm gonna reference yet another article in today's podcast episode, but there's a great piece, by Nick Rubin, writing for Rock Paper Shotgun called "No, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 wasn't made by 30 people." And he breaks down exactly that. It's like, yeah, sure, Sandfall, the developer, only has about 30 people that work for them, but when you factor in contractors, that number goes way up, and this kind of
mhm,
ties back to the deprofessionalization conversation that we were having before of this idea of like, "Oh my god, this game was made by only X number of people," and, like, that narrative getting drummed up and this idea that, like, "Oh, you can do great things with just a few people and some
mhm,
chewing gum and a great
mhm.
idea." And it's like, "No, but there's all these other people that are involved that we kind of just, like, pretend they didn't exist."
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in a lot of these cases with slightly larger teams like Samfall, which I don't think that any of this was done intentionally on their part, but a lot of the other folks that they worked with, the contractors, are East Asian, and so, like,
Mhm,
you end up with this kind of, like, thing that keeps happening where games made in the US and the UK, minimize the contributions from these East Asian development studios, and they're kind of using those studios to outsource their crunch. Like,
mhm,
these Western studios can be like, "Oh, we didn't crunch on this game at all." Now, the, like, 8-person team that we had working on shit over in Korea, they were working, like, 300 hours a week, but
mhm.
we didn't crunch here at our studio.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that that explicitly happened with Clair Obscur, I have no information about that, but it's an interesting trend that keeps happening and a narrative that keeps getting pushed kind of, like, in media and anyway, so I just think it's
Well,
important not to
too
flatten that stuff.
yeah, I think too, a lot of the mainstream narrative that I've been seeing about this game in particular is that, oh, like, this game is extra impressive because for several of the kind of lead, like, the leadership team, creative direction, narrative direction, um oh, they had no background in games and they were able to make this. And it's
Yeah,
like, well, yes, they had amazing contributions to the game, but I think that also contributes to the invisibility of these outsourced studios who were involved.
yeah,
And it's creating this unattainable narrative that, like, oh, if you have a good enough of idea, you don't even have to have any games training or like know how to do any like programming skills. And so and I'm not saying that I don't think that anyone if you asked any of these folks on the team, I'm sure that they would say, "Oh yeah, this is how we did it with this team and these are what the people
yeah,
involved." I'm
yeah.
just saying the media twist on how this game came to be very much kind of ignores the reality of how this game was made and kind of puts folks up on a pedestal of like, "Oh, like, did you know that so and so was working in tech and had no game background and they made this?" Like,
Yeah.
anyone can just go and make a game, and it barely requires any, skill at all, like, you can just do it. So I wanna be clear that, like, I both fully support that anyone can make a game,
Mhm.
and also, like you're just alluding to, there are issues with this portrayal that, um, as certain types of people are given the spotlight,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
we're
let's just
seeing that as
describe what actually
yeah.
happened and celebrate what actually
Yeah,
happened. Because
exactly.
ultimately, it doesn't matter if one person made a game totally by themselves or 500 people worked on a game. If the game is great, then I think all those people deserve to be celebrated for their accomplishment. It's just kind of
Totally.
weird how a lot of times in the West we want to hyper focus on this narrative. And I think a lot of it comes down to our like pull yourself up by your bootstrap
Mhm,
culture and like individualism in the US in particular that
mhm,
we really love finding a narrative that we think supports this idea that like one person just strode out on their own and did it with nothing else that was
mhm.
involved, and that's really not the case in most situations. It usually takes a lot of people involved to pull something like this off. I just wanna specifically highlight with Clair Obscur, you know, we keep shouting out the awesome gameplay, the parry
Yeah.
system, all of that. There's an 8-person, Korean gameplay animation team that worked on the gameplay animation. You know what
Mhm.
makes parry timing work and feel good?
Mm.
Gameplay animation. Dozens and dozens of people worked on localization, QA, and voice production work. And there were at least 30 plus musicians that worked on the soundtrack, including a 9-person choir. So that great
Mhm.
score we were shouting out earlier, there's 30 people that don't work for Sandfall, and that on its own doubles the number of people involved with the game. So
Yeah,
it's that narrative of oh my god, only X number of people worked on this, I think is damaging, and, like, let's just be honest about how many people were involved and celebrate all of those people, and not minimize the contributions from contract studios because, you know, especially with this team making the gameplay animations, like, they clearly had a pretty significant impact on the final product of that game. Like, Clair
totally.
Obscur isn't the game that it is without those gameplay animations, so
Yeah,
it sucks to think that we would be telling a narrative that downplays work.
yeah.
I don't know, is there anything else that we wanted to gripe about before we talk about what we like about this game?
Also, I think we were talking about deprofessionalization before we started recording. Do you wanna give
Yeah.
a quick, like, what is that
Oh, no,
for folks?
we talked about that when we were talking about, we talked about that on the recording.
Oh, we
I know it
did?
gets confusing sometimes because yeah, when we were talking about Summer Games Fest.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, that's okay.
Um, let's talk about what we liked.
Yeah. What did you like about this game?
Or let's talk about, okay, I mean, I guess I'd say some of the strongest aspects of the game for me were the narrative elements and kind of the world building was really impressive. Like, I liked how this
Mhm,
game included a lot of showing, not telling,
mhm,
um, where you kind of piece together the dynamics and relationships of this world just by exploring it and talking to characters and progressing through the story. Like there was like there were moments where I would like especially in the beginning, I'd be like, "Am I just supposed to know what X, Y, and Z is?"
uh-huh,
Um, and at first it kind of bothered me, but then I kind of appreciated the immersion of it of like, wow, there's a whole culture and society and structure happening in this world that I'm just walking into, but these characters have lived in. Um, and I really appreciated how I thought I knew what I was getting into and what I was building towards. And then the last 20% of the game just like totally blew that out of the water.
mhm.
So, um,
I mean, I think even before the last 20%, the game definitely at multiple points throughout pulls the rug out from under you in a
mm,
significant way. You think
mm,
the game is going one way, and then they do a rug pull, and you're like, "Oh." And it doesn't feel cheap. I didn't think any of those rug pulls felt, unearned or like they were doing
mhm,
it just to create a surprise, shock moment, in the narrative. They all felt they all felt great and surprising in a genuine way, and the way the game picks up from there and moves on was cool. Yeah.
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 I know we alluded to mechanics and more commentary on the design of the game earlier when we were talking about accessibility issues. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about, sort of the what's going on in this game. Like,
Yeah,
what's it
what
all about? What are we doing?
what is it all about? Um, I Yeah, I mean, I said in the overview, you're playing as this team of expeditioners, most of whom are 33 years old or close to it, that are going out either in their last year of life. And so rather than quote unquote wasted at home in Lumiere, like with their loved ones, they're
Mhm,
going to branch out into the unknown and try to continue to forge a path towards the Paintress. The time is running out for the people of Lumiere. They're down to, 33 being the oldest age that exists, and every year that gets younger. So they're becoming a bit more desperate. But they've been sending expeditions for I think the oldest ones we hear about are in the 70s,
mm,
right?
mhm,
So
yep,
they've been sending expeditions for over 40 years, um, of people going out and trying to forge this path. So one thing that I thought was cool is that as you're moving through the world, I mean, yeah, you do find that they use the flags that are the checkpoints, but those flags are supposed to be placed by previous expeditions.
mhm,
You're constantly encountering things, and you find journals from previous expeditions. You find bodies of previous expeditions. You find anchor points in the world that will allow you to climb up a thing. And these are all supposed to be placed by expeditions that have come before you. Like you're seeing the remnants of expeditions that have gone ahead. And so there's this constant theme, like they even have like a saying in the expedition of for those who come after.
mhm,
And it's just constantly repeated this idea that everything you're doing for the generation that's after you to try to create a better world. You're trying to push forward, suffer hardships, trying to make things better so that whoever comes next has it a little bit easier. They can get a little bit further than they did. I thought that was a really powerful theme, a theme that's perhaps lost on a lot of our current society and culture,
mm, yeah,
um, which tends to be really focused on grabbing what you can for yourself now while you can grab it, instead of thinking about the future. And I think it dovetails well with some of the themes that I recognized of what it means. I don't know. I saw a lot of parallels to narratives around climate change and
mhm,
what we're experiencing in this story, or just the feeling of living in a world that you can clearly see is dying.
yeah, yeah,
They talk about a lot of there's plenty of people who decide not to become parents because they don't want to have a kid that they know they're going to die within a decade, depending on
mhm,
how early you have the kid of having that kid. People do the math and they just say I don't want to leave an orphan behind. Like I don't
right,
want my kid to have to grow up in this situation. Which literally, resonated for me personally as someone who's had those conversations, had those thoughts about, what does it mean to have kids in our current situation when it feels like,
mhm,
I wanna have hope for the future, but it's hard for me to feel like I would wanna bring someone into such an uncertain future where our planet is very much not doing well, and we're not taking care of it and doesn't I don't know if we're gonna get our shit together in a timely
yeah,
manner to be able to change that. So that feeling of growing up in a world where you don't know if you have a future, that the world is actually dying. I mean, in Clair Obscur, the world is not dying, but the people are.
mhm,
They're literally watching the extinction of their society and
yeah,
people and having to reckon with that and how that influences the way you think about things like death and life and what you're willing to put at stake in that environment. I don't know, there was a lot there that resonated for me personally, given, yeah, what's happening globally and socially.
yeah, yeah. I also, I think that I don't wanna I guess we can get into it more in the spoiler section of the episode, but, I also appreciated I felt like within this fantasy world that very clearly took inspiration from a certain time period, down to, like, dress and kind of the level of technology available and things like that. One of the twists I really appreciated was that there was this, um I don't know how to say without being spoilery, but like I think there's also this meditation on processing pain or difficult emotions and sitting with that and moving through it versus escaping it. Um and I guess that's all I'm gonna say right now. But
Yeah.
I it was something that caught me off guard. But I felt was handled in a really cool way. Sorry, that's such a
No, I
bad
mean, I
way
think
to.
I don't know, I think that captured, like, the essence of the theme without spoiling.
Yeah. Um, okay.
A few other things I wanna hit on before we move into spoiler
Yeah.
territory, that I liked. Well, I have mixed feelings about the exploration of the game. It doesn't always feel fun to do,
Mm,
but the areas that you're exploring are very pretty, or
mhm.
they're gross. Sometimes they're gross and weird and scary, but, like, in a pretty way. I
Mhm.
definitely felt a lot of Elden Ring inspiration in terms of the design of the world and the design of the
Yes.
enemy types. The
Yeah.
enemies can be really
Freaky.
strange looking, freaky looking. They move in ways that something, a live creature shouldn't move.
Yeah.
But you can definitely feel if you've played any From Software games, you can definitely feel the inspiration in the art style for sure. Um, but when you're, you know, the way the exploration works in the game, you have this game actually uses an overworld map, which I don't think
I
gets
loved
used
that.
that often in games anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have, like, big picture, like, you're moving around the overworld map, and when you're doing that, your characters are really small on the screen, or eventually you get, a way to travel faster that you can
Mhm.
switch to instead, to move around the map, but then you move around the map and you come to, like, kind of a clear, like, watery looking portal thing, and that's a separate area that you can enter, and when you enter that area, you could kind of think of it like a dungeon. Sometimes it's a really small area where you can just go in there and grab a collectible and then run back out. Sometimes there's a lot of the side content in the game where you can do, different challenges to win, like, cosmetics or goofy stuff like that. So it might be an area like that, or it uh, might be a full area to run around in third person and explore. And the items that you pick up all kinda look the same. They're just like shiny
Mhm.
shards on the ground, but you pick up, what's basically money. It's called chroma, but money. It's the main source of money in the game. You pick up, upgrade materials for your weapons. You pick up upgrade materials for your characters. There's, this whole system called Lumina, which is the system Spencer referenced earlier that they didn't, understand because it wasn't super well tutorialized,
Yeah.
but
And
basically,
Pictos.
yeah, Lumina and Pictos, your characters have, um, what's called a Pictos. You have 3 slots on each character. It's essentially equipment, it might be the best way to think of it,
Mm,
but it's a piece of equipment that has an impact to your stats. For example, it might increase your health or your speed or your crit rate or your defense. And then it also has, like, a perk attached to it. So, uh, one Pictos that I have, makes it so that every time I apply burn on an enemy, I apply double the amount of burn. Um, I have one that gives me an extra action point whenever I parry something. I
mhm.
have one called Glass Cannon that makes me do 25% more damage, but I take 25% more damage as well.
Mm,
Ones like that. So you have those 3 slots where you equip the Pictos. Once you have a Pictos equipped for at least 4 battles on a character, it unlocks and becomes just I mean, you still have the Pictos that can be equipped on a character that comes with the stat benefits, but separately, you can go into what's called the Lumina menu, and each of your characters have a pool of Lumina points that they can assign, which basically allows you to buy a Pictos that you don't have equipped and earn its perk, but not its stat benefits. Really
I'm sorry.
important thing.
I'm I'm
What?
laughing because this is one of the things where I was navigating these convoluted ass
Uh-huh.
menus, and my partner who was watching was like, "I don't understand what's happening. Like,
He would be
why
forgiven.
are the same like, why are
Yeah.
the Pictos also in the Luminos menu? What's with the points? Like, why are they different colors?" And I
Yeah.
was just like, Yeah, took
It's
me a while.
confusing, and frankly, for a long time, I found it so overwhelming. I
Yes.
mean, finally, after 50 hours into the game, I understand it, and it's no longer like, "Oh my god," but there's a stretch of the game where I felt like I was finding a new Pictos every, like, 5 minutes,
Mhm.
and I was honestly getting annoyed. I was like, "I
Yep.
don't wanna find
It's
any
like,
more of these. I
I
don't know
can't
what
be
to do with the ones
responsible
I
for this.
have."
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to do with the ones I have. I'm overwhelmed and confused. I've got
Yeah.
a literal laundry list of these fucking things, and I don't know how to use them. I don't well, it's like I know how to use them, but it was so overwhelming that I couldn't find the synergies.
Mhm.
Uh, I I don't know. Nobody else really seems to be complaining about this, so this is probably just unique to me and you. But I just felt so overwhelmed, and it took me so long before I was actually willing to go into that menu and
Mhm.
try to build a strategy with between my skills and Pictos and Lumina that made sense for the character and like
Yeah.
actually like optimized them. And when you do that, it feels awesome, right? Like the end result of all those systems is that you can create a synergistic combo of Pictos and Lumina and skills that turns your fucking character into a god. And, like, I'm not
Mhm.
even doing the kind of damage that I'm sure some people who are way smarter than me are
Mhm.
doing, but it's like, I rearranged some shit on one of my characters last night, and I was consistently hitting for, like, 35K with every
Nice.
hit, and I was just
Yeah.
like, "This is amazing. I love
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
And that's like that just to give some context, like 35K for a long time in the game, you're capped at 10K, basically,
Mhm.
9,999. So to suddenly be doing 35K is
Yeah.
like, yeah, feels
And
great.
I still
But
yeah,
actually
like,
getting to that point, the game really doesn't do a lot to hold your hand or like help you through
no.
that process. You've really got to
No.
just put in the time and effort on yourself. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed in
Yeah.
that. What were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. I was just gonna say, like, at a certain point, I had done a series, like, someone's skill, and it netted out to, like, 80,000 damage, and my partner was like, "How did you do that?" And I was like, "I l I couldn't tell you."
Like magic. Magic, baby. Um, the game I mentioned before the game has these platforming challenges in it. The platforming in the game is atrocious.
Oh my god.
It's so bad to the
Which
point
also
where
kind of felt
I
retro and
I know,
nostalgic to me.
I think the platforming challenges are intentional, like, they know it's bad, and so they put these
Mhm.
challenges in there where they know you're just gonna be, like, beating your head against the wall, but it's kind of fun,
Yeah.
but still, it's really bad. It's really bad. Um and then the final gameplay thing I wanted to mention was camp. There's actually
Yes.
moments in the game when you're in the overworld map, you can actually make camp, and there'll be a little fireplace, and it'll be nighttime, and they have you play as the main character in those sections, and you can go and talk to the other party members with Gustav and have conversations with them, and you actually start to level up the relationships after a certain point in the game with the various characters on your team. And it's really straightforward and simple. I mean, I personally probably like what I've seen a bit more in like Persona, where it feels like it's a little more involved. Like you have to make decisions that the character is going to like to actually increase that relationship. But
Mhm.
I didn't mind what we got in Clair Obscur, and I appreciate that there was anything there at all with relationships. And there is some romance in this game. You can pursue a relationship with one of two characters if you
What?
choose to do so. Yeah.
How? I guess we'll get into
It
that
just
in
comes up in the
spoilers.
conversations. If you just keep talking to these 2 characters, you'll eventually get an opportunity to romance them. If you just keep doing their camp. What was your highest relationship level, bro?
I maxed out 2 of the
Alright,
characters.
we'll save it for spoilers,
Okay.
but you there's 2 people you can
Did you
romance.
romance someone?
Yeah, I did. I did. But I
Nice.
didn't realize that unfortunately, the one person offers you a relationship first, and if you pursue that one, it locks out the other one.
Ah.
So, it does do a little bit of that. It's not super flexible, but still. Um, let's see. Did you wanna talk about the Japanese role-playing game of it all, the AKA JRPG of it all a
Sure.
bit? Um How do I lean into this? Yeah, I don't know. We were talking a bit before we started recording about, we said this game we both really like this game. This is not us coming for the game. We have some complaints about it, but we really like the game overall. But the way this game has been kinda talked about from the beginning of it coming out, I mean, I remember right away reviews started dropping. People were just screaming about, like, "This is game of the year. This game is so amazing." And there was a lot of conversation that I personally heard, from different content creators and reviewers talking about this game in this vein of like, "Oh, it's a JRPG that I actually enjoy." And I first just want to say, like, the phrase JRPG, which stands for Japanese role playing game, has kind of within the last year or two, it's been, some notable Japanese role playing game developer, like people who are Japanese who develop role playing games, have come out and said, like,
Mhm.
actually, like, some of us kind of find that term a little bit offensive because when the term originally started getting used in like the late 90s, early aughts, or somewhere in there, it was really used in the West kind of derogatorily. It was like
Mhm.
there's Western RPGs and then there's these Japanese RPGs, and they're 2 different
Mhm.
things. And
Mhm.
the Japanese role-playing games tend to have turn-based mechanics, whereas the Western ones tended to have action mechanics. It was definitely used as like a qualifier
Yeah.
in terms of the way it was said. And it also gets used in a way that is not very descriptive. It's not like every role-playing game that comes out of Japan is referred to as a JRPG. Case in
Mhm.
point, the Souls games and all the stuff that From Software makes, you would hear almost no Western media person refer to those games as JRPGs, and yet by definition, they are role playing games that come from Japan.
Right.
But nobody would even think to call them a JRPG because JRPG has this other set of connotations.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, this game made in France, it's definitely not a Japanese role-playing game, and yet it's
Mhm.
kinda been kicked around, like, talking about it like, "Oh, it's like Persona, but I like it more because it's about
Right.
adults, and it's gritty, and it's not anime, and
Mm.
they put parries
Except
and
it is
dodges
so
in my turn."
anime.
Exactly, exactly, which we kinda touched on a
Yeah.
minute ago, but, like, the premise is super fucking anime.
Yes.
Anyway, uh, I don't think anybody came at that conversation that I heard talk about it, like, disingenuously, and I don't think people are even really probably aware of some of the connotations behind it, but some of it did rub me, and I'm sure you have more to say about
Mhm.
this too, like, the wrong way. It just felt a little bit like we were saying, like, finally, a Western developer made a role-playing game to taught the
Yeah.
Japanese RPG makers how to do it.
Yeah.
Nobody said that explicitly. It
Right.
just felt a little bit weird.
Mhm.
um, and I think, probably a more generous reading of this is that there's a lot of folks who really dig Soulsborne mechanics, who really dig dodging and parrying mechanics and active game mechanics. And it's totally valid if you don't love uh like turn-based games. Like that's a
Mhm.
valid take to have. They by and large tend to be slower and play slower. And this game takes turn-based mechanics and incorporates a lot of live active elements into them between the QTEs and the dodging and parrying. And so I understand why that might speak to a broader audience and particularly a Western audience. Um,
Yeah.
it just some of the commentary around it felt a little bit suspect in terms of
Yeah.
how the game was being highlighted as this like come to Jesus moment for role playing games.
Totally. Totally. And I think, like, I absolutely agree with that. And I am definitely someone who loves turn-based role-playing games and was like to the Elden Ring example, like I really couldn't get into Elden Ring because it was too it was too scary for me and it was too intense and I suck at pattern recognition in games and I just couldn't it was so frustrating. I couldn't get past it and I didn't get much more in than like maybe 10, 15 hours into Elden Ring. It was a good I gave it the old college try. Um I do appreciate this game for like, I feel like because of the structure that the turn-based format provides where, I don't know, something about it, even though there are quick time events when we engage in the action of a turn, and there's still that element of that very Souls-like combat, but there's still pauses in between for me to collect myself and my thoughts. I felt like through playing this game, I was able to relate to the Elden Ring player and say to myself, like, "Okay, I kinda get it." Like, this game has given me a framework to engage with the horrifying elements of parrying and movement that have held me back from enjoying, like, FromSoft games in the past, and I appreciate this game for helping me see what people love about it, and the fact that I was pursuing harder and harder boss battles and that I thoroughly enjoyed the feeling of nailing it, and that I was able to like, I spent, like, 4 hours in one of these offshoot worlds we were talking about where you can find a spot on the map where you're basically just looking for a boss and fighting it, and going through that repetition and then eventually coming out on top, like, I was like, "Wow, I really enjoyed this," and I don't know that I would have ever gotten to that point without this. I really liked that. Um, I don't know why I'm saying that. I guess I just, to your point about, like, uh, the good faith argument,
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
it's there, and also
Yeah.
there were plenty of gamers who were like, for me, my interaction with this discourse was just having a weird taste in my mouth when I would see some of the accolades from folks, like comments, the tone of certain comments when praising this game about being like, "Oh, finally."
Mm,
Like, "Oh, like a JRPG I'd actually wanna play." And I'd be like,
mm,
"Well, what is your idea of what a JRPG is, and how many have you actually engaged with before you're just
yeah,
making this blanket statement?"
yeah.
Some of that just kinda rubbed me the wrong way, and I also thought to myself at times, like, you know, it was a diverse team who made this game, and, we do have some representation, some, racial diversity in terms of the cast of characters that are on screen when we're playing the game.
Mhm,
However, I did feel like there was a lot I would have liked to see the developers leaning even more into that.
mhm,
Like it's still I mean, one is like a forest spirit who is fuzzy and wears a wooden mask, but like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5, 4 out of 5 of the main cast are white folks. And the one black character that we encounter at the beginning of the game, unfortunately is killed within the opening scene of the game, and we
mm,
never see any other people of color in the game. And so I'm
yeah.
kind of like, that's when I made that joke earlier about, this game isn't woke, so that's why people love it so much. And it
Yeah.
sucks that that's kind of the
That I've
litmus
seen
test.
that talking point float around a little bit
Oh,
though, like,
great.
too, like, I mean, yeah, I think that's so I think the phrase you used of, like, kinda, like, leaves a bad taste in our mouth a little bit, it's real. It's like, I like this game a lot, and yet I'm a little bit suspect of some of the effusive praise around it being
Yeah,
as to whether like, how genuine that is. Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, I think I'm maybe conflating 2 points here by talking about the diversity aspect,
Mm,
about, like I think I just bring that up because I think anytime I see that much relief coming from the mainstream gaming discourse about why we love this game,
mhm,
it just makes me think like, well, what makes you say that? Like, is it just
mhm.
one it's probably a combination of things, but I don't know, it's unfortunately just the way gaming discourse is nowadays, it's hard to sometimes take what you see at face value, and it leaves you wondering, like, because there's no and again, like, not that every game has to represent every type of person,
Sure, yeah.
but, it just makes you wonder. And having, one type of character, like I do love the character of Lune. Um, I'm glad she's there. And also like in a game that's still 95% white in terms of characters on screen. I know that the makeup of the team who made it was incredibly diverse and had a lot of great viewpoints and perspectives. I just want It's 2025, like, I wanna see more.
Mhm.
I would have liked to see more because representation does matter, and seeing yourself on screen is very powerful, and, if you're gonna ask someone to spend 50 plus hours in a world, it just can suck not to see yourself. So anyway, I don't know how we got into this tangent. I feel like I'm all over the place today. So thank you
No, I
for
think the
anyone who's still here.
we've had a lot of thoughts on this game, and yeah, so we've been a little bit chaotic in how we presented them,
Oh
but
my gosh.
I agree with everything that you're saying, and it's also something that I clocked while we were playing the game and have similar feelings about, and yeah, like you said, not every game has to have every single aspect of diversity included in it, and yet representation is important, and it would have been nice to see a little bit more diversity, uh, on the screen,
Yeah.
uh, and in what we played.
Yes.
Um
And I think to bring it back to the whole JRPG discussion, I think what what it was bringing up for me was like I think in a lot of that sentiment around, oh, finally like a Western RPG that's like setting a new standard, and it's not like one of those games that I would never play. I just feel like there's a combination of kind of like uh the exotification of Japanese culture and kind of like Western notions of like what a Japanese game is, combined with this idea for some folks that Western is equated with whiteness, and
Mm,
like, oh, finally a like a game that represents like, you know, oh, it's a normal game. There's none of this wokeness. There's like I just feel like some of that feedback for me uh just had some of this sentiment of like, oh, finally a return to quote unquote normalcy, and like a quote unquote like real Western game that has the things that I want to see. Me,
mhm.
the vocal minority in this whole gaming industry, which is like white men who feel like they don't have enough that's just for them. Um
Mhm.
are coming in and voicing this, and I wanna unpack that a bit more, which is not to say that this is not a game that can be enjoyed by everyone if you aren't a white dude, because it can.
Yeah.
This is really not about the other than the other than the my complaint about the lack of of bodily and racial diversity,
Oh my
what
god,
I'm
everyone's
talking
so
about
tiny and skinny in this game.
yeah. What I'm talking about is less about the game itself and more about perceptions of the game coming from the
Mhm.
outside, except for those 2 things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, but, like, it's hard to parse those all that super distinctly because I think a lot of that influences what ends up coming out of people's mouth. I mean, when you consider,
Mhm,
like, implicit bias and
mhm.
how we read a game and see a game, like, I think, at least when it comes to, like, mainstream games media, I doubt there's a ton of people who really talked about this game with any, like, ill intent or malicious
Of
intent in
course.
how they thought about it or reviewed it, and yet still some of the commentary and then the way it conflates with mainstream gaming discourse from the, gamers TM, all that stuff kinda gets wrapped up together, and it just it can make you suspect of what you're seeing and feel like maybe people are liking something for slightly wrong reasons or reasons that are influenced by implicit bias and bad takes. And the game can still be good, like, all of those things can
Mhm.
still be true at the same time, and part of the reason you love it to the extent that you do might be tied up in some implicit bias. So anyway, that's it all influences us
Yeah.
and anyway,
We live
it's
in a
yeah,
society.
we do live in a society. But yeah, great point about the body diversity. I noticed that when I was playing the game, it was like everyone is so like almost like scarily thin. Like their
Yeah.
arms are little toothpicks
Mhm.
and like their waist
What's that
is
about?
the size of a thimble. And that's just like, I know we're out here running around in the world.
It's
Maybe
that French diet.
we're not eating very much, but like please have a sandwich. Y'all you're really working hard out here.
Yeah.
Whoo! Any final thoughts on Clair Obscur Expedition 33 before we move into spoilers? Should people check it out after we've
Yeah,
just
no,
been all up and
yes.
down and all over the place with our
Oh my
cultural
god.
commentary?
There's just a lot going on in this game, like, definitely
Yeah.
check it out. I think, unique mechanics, gorgeously rendered world. really compelling story.
Mhm,
I think I don't know what I thought at first. Like, I thought it was and this is I don't know. I thought at first it was mostly about the combat and that the it was mostly about aesthetic and that it wouldn't get too deep. And
mhm,
then the story absolutely blew me away. If you're willing to invest in it, it really is such a rewarding payoff. Um,
mhm.
and the ending is one of the most memorable that I've experienced in a game over the past couple years. So
Yeah,
I
and you
definitely
can
recommend checking it out.
if you mainline the story,
Mhm.
I've heard people say you can get through it in as little as, like, 20 hours or less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, Spencer said that they put in, like, 40 plus, I put in 50 plus, right?
It was
Or
I put in 40 plus, but I would say probably more like 25 to 30 on just the main story. I got there
Oh,
were a
okay.
few moments where I got pulled into, like, wanting to explore the map, um, but I would say probably more like 25 to 30 on just the main storyline.
Okay, yeah, I guess I was just saying, like, my point is, like, our game clocks are more bloated because we've been peeling
Yeah.
off and doing the side content here and there. I haven't gone back to the game since I hit credits, but before I hit credits, I definitely every time I got, like, a new way to traverse, I went around the
Mhm.
map and tried to do everything that I could. It in terms of that side content, the game is really good about flagging when something's gonna be beyond your capabilities, like, if you go to one of those portal things I mentioned on the overworld map, if it's too high level for you, it just glows red and says danger.
Mhm.
And so it's like really
Yeah.
clear. It's like, hey, you're probably not ready for this yet. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll fuck off.
Yeah.
I'll come back later, kind of a thing. Um, but man, I wish they let you like check mark your map or something. Like do
Oh,
anything. Like, why is there no mini map when you're in the
yes.
dungeons either? Like, give
Thank
me a
you.
fucking map,
I
guys.
know.
I actually saw I think it was a Reddit comment, but, there's that whole, constant theme of for those who come after, and somebody
Mhm.
commented, "Why don't they make a map for those who come after? Leave them a fucking
Yes.
map rather than these expedition journals, like, help
Yeah,
a
for
brother
real.
out."
For real. No, I
Um,
really would have loved like, the levels were just big enough that not having a mini map
yeah.
got kind of tedious, but
Yep.
I would have loved the ability to leave like, even just I found myself even in the overworld, I would open the map a lot because I'd be like, "Wait, I know it was roughly northwest, but there are so many
Yeah.
little locations you can enter." I would kind of be like, "Wait, is it that or is it that one over there?" And I have to keep opening the
Yeah.
map, so
Yeah.
leaving a marker, like a beacon, would have been
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, having map markers would have been great. I ended up just, like, taking notes. Taking some
Oh,
notes.
nice.
Just being like, "Go back to this place," because it does on the overworld map, you can see, like, the names of
Mhm.
places when you open it, so, be like, "This place has this boss that I couldn't beat yet," or, "Couldn't go
Yeah.
back to this yet," so but it'd be great if that was in the game. But all that said, overall, I think this is a really great game. I definitely can see it being like one of my favorite games of the year when we get to the end of the year. Um, I don't think it's for everybody. Like I
Mhm.
don't think this game will speak to everyone. I think the story's really cool, like you said, and but the mechanics and some of those frustration points definitely make it like pretty kind of targeted and limit the overall
Mhm.
scope. Um, so, especially if you're into fairies and you're
Mhm.
into, complex stories and narratives, and you wanna kinda be surprised and delighted as you work through a narrative, I think this is definitely a game to check out. I think, it definitely takes inspiration from Final Fantasy, but personally, I found this speaking very specifically to Final Fantasy VII, which just that story does not speak to me hardly at all. Like those I struggle with that game. Like I think the story in this definitely resonated for me more than the Final Fantasy games, but not more than Persona. Love
Mm-mm.
Persona's still better than Clair Obscur. I'll die on that hill. But yeah, it's a really, really good one of those that I think does some interesting stuff with the genre in the incorporation of the live action mechanics. And yeah, overall really like the aesthetics and like the themes and great game.
Great game.
Let's dig into some spoilers. And I really
Okay.
so you've been warned, spoilers are starting
Yeah.
now. Turn the
Yeah.
podcast off, skip ahead.
Mhm.
I'll put the timestamps in the in the episode description once we have them. But we're gonna be
Yeah.
spoiling Clair Obscur Expedition 33 all the way through the end of the story, now.
Yeah.
But I wanna
I
turn it over
spec
to you, Spencer,
Oh, sure.
because I know you've got a lot of feelings and things to say about the end of this game in particular.
Yeah, like, I specifically wanna talk about the ending. So, I
Mhm.
guess for anyone who maybe if you're still listening and you just kinda wanna know, if you want some context on what we're gonna talk about, I'll just give, like, a quick overview of the story. So, like, literally stop
Okay,
now if you don't wanna be spoiled at all.
okay.
But, okay, as Jimmy mentioned, the Paintress has lorded over this world, and no one knows what her intents or motives are, but she has been creating this situation where people be getting homaged, each year on the same day. I'm assuming homage must mean, like, scrub or something. I just say this
I'm gonna give it
because
a quick search.
okay, I
I didn't know
noticed in
what
my
Clair Obscur meant until we were texting last night, and you're
yeah.
like, "It's so Clair Obscur," and I'm like, "Well, but actually, what does that
What does
mean?"
that mean? But I noticed in my shower, I have a body scrub, and it's literally like body gommage, look, French word for body and then gommage. And I was like, oh, does gommage mean
To
to like
erase.
to
Gamache
erase?
translates as
Okay,
to erase or to rub, which makes perfect
nice.
sense as with this technique I'm reading off of the Skin Nerd. You are quite literally rubbing dead skin cells off the surface of your
There you
skin.
go.
Yep,
There you go.
yep.
So the Paintress is doing this every year. No one knows why. So the game opens, and there is a young girl named Mael who is 16 years old, has grown up in this world of Lumiere. Her parents have died. She's been passed from house to house, and she has found an older brother figure in Gustav, who has kind of someone that she sees as both like a brother and a father. And they embark on the expedition together. She
Which is, like, really
does,
rare too. I like the detail that, like, everyone's kind of like, "Really?" Like, both to Gustav, like,
yeah.
"You're gonna let Mael go?" And, like, to Mael, like, "Why are you
Hmm.
wasting your life? You've still got, like, several more years that you could live and be happy here in Lumiere." And she's kind of like, "What life do I have here?
Yeah.
Like, my family, Gustav, is going on this, like, I wanna
Hmm.
be there with him to help him survive and get as far as he can."
Yeah. Plus this idea of like, if I'm gonna die, and the clock is counting down, so it's like, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
like
not
she's
like
gonna
she'd have
die at
15 years.
33.
Yeah, no, she's gonna
Every
yeah,
year it's counting down, so,
yep.
like, in the future, there could be, like, the max age of any person is gonna be, 21, 20, 19, 18, and so, like, humanity's gonna go extinct one way or another, so she kinda wants to live and not just be waiting for death to come. So, early in the game, you encounter, Renoir, who is a man who is older. He's, like, in
Voiced
his
by
late
Andy Serkis.
Oh,
Sorry to
yeah.
keep interrupting you, but I
No!
realized while the credits were rolling last night, after being like, "Wow, Renoir, what a performance in that game." Get to the credits
Yeah.
rolling, it's Andy fucking Serkis voiced
Mhm.
Renoir. Blew my goddamn mind. I was like,
Did a
"Oh
great job.
my god."
He didn't even sound like himself.
Well, I mean, no, he's the man's a chameleon. He can blend
Yeah,
into any role. Yeah,
truly.
I mean, yeah, I it was
Yeah.
that was wild.
No, that was
He's
awesome.
Gollum, he's Caesar, Planet of
Yeah,
the Apes. He's
like, he's
he's
everybody.
Kino Loy in Andor, which you still need to fucking finish.
I watched episode 2 last night, I'll have you know.
Okay, well, we gotta talk about that more
Sorry, we'll
later,
go
but please
sorry,
continue.
everyone, okay.
Continue
You
your
encounter
assessment.
Renoir, who is, in his late 50s, so you're like, "Wait a minute, there's someone who's older," and he is just wiping out expeditions, and you don't know why. And Mael also encounters, a young woman who looks mysteriously like her, but she wears a mask. So, I don't wanna get too mired in, like, the details of the narrative, so what I would say is, over time, you learn that Mael is not just Mael. The reason why she sees this shadow version of her of someone who looks just like her is because she is a painter. There the world of Lumiere is contained within a canvas, and it's basically a simulated world that has been painted into existence by this godlike race of people who have these powers to literally paint things to life. Mael had a brother named Verso, and due to a circumstance that isn't fully explained, which I kind of appreciated, it wasn't like there's worlds within worlds happening in this game, and you're kind of just dropped into it, and you piece together the world building just by observing and picking up context clues from characters. But um, there was a fire in the family home, and
An
Verso
attack
died.
by the quote they call them the writers.
Yes,
So, like,
so
in the
there's
meta
these
world,
races,
there's
yeah.
painters and writers, and the writers in an attack against the painters, set
Set their house on
I can't
fire.
say the family's last name, but they
I
set the
forget it,
painter's
yeah.
house on fire.
Which I kind of love as this kind of meta narrative that the writers are like the writers of the game. Like, oh, the writers just set this family's house on fire so that we
That's
have a
such a good
story.
point. That's such a good point, yeah.
It's just plot.
Oh my god, that's
So,
amazing.
um, so Verso dies in the fire. Mael is suffers burns to her face and body. And she burned her vocal cords as well. So in the quote unquote like real world, Mael, whose real name is Alicia, is living in the shell of her family that's been destroyed by this event. Verso has died. It's kind of like the parents and her older sister are kind of lost in their grief. In some ways, they kind of resent her for what happened, even though she was a child and it wasn't her fault. And they know it wasn't her fault, but it's implied that Alicia slash Mael had sort of invited the writers into the house or thought had fallen for some kind of trick that resulted in them setting fire to the house. So Verso dies. And as a result, the world that Lumiere is set in this canvas was actually created by Verso when he was a child, and it was his world that he played in with his parents and sisters, and he created all these monsters, he created these lands, and it was kind of like an escape fantasy for him, and as a family of painters with these powers, they would go into this world together. As a result, there's a lingering piece of Verso's soul that still exists in this canvas. So Alicia's parents, um, Renoir, who is the older man that we talked about earlier, and her mother, who is the paintress, quote unquote, that we encounter in the game. Um, I forget her mother's name, but the paintress, in terms of the villain, she is basically just totally sunk into this world, trying to be close to her son who has passed by fully uh involving herself in this fantasy. On the outside world, she's spent so long just being in the canvas that she's kind of wasting away and isn't working through the grief or connecting with her family in the real world. And Alicia slash Mael's father, Wenwar, has been coming into the canvas as well, trying to get their mother to wake up and push herself out, and has been actually orchestrating the gamage to try to erase all of the new creations that the paintress is making to try to create this world in which her son can still live, including a facsimile of Verso who has been made to come alive in the game. And this is where I want to start talking about stuff.
Yeah, just quickly, the
Because
paintress is,
yes,
her real name, the mom is Aline.
Aline, thank you.
Yep.
So facsimiles of each member of the family have been created inside this canvas. Most of them are kind of like aware of both who they are on the outside world and who they are within it. I should mention Mael becomes Mael because in the real world, she enters the painting to try to help her father get her mother to wake up and come out of the canvas. But as a result, she kind of gets overpowered by the amount of magic or chroma that's inside the canvas, and she gets reborn as basically a character inside this simulation. She looks like herself, but she has no memories of who she is, and she is named Mael by her parents inside the canvas, and so she she grows up, has a whole second life as this new person, and late in the game realizes who she is, and kind of those two selves merge. It's very
Mhm.
Devs, if you've ever seen that show. Great show.
Yeah.
Um, so okay. We talked about Gustav/Robert Pattinson early in the episode. He is beloved by Mael, and is kind of like your protagonist for the first third of the game. He suddenly is murdered by Renoir. It's shocking. I was like,
Oh,
"What?"
so I think it's specifically the facsimile of Renoir, right?
Right, the facsimile of Renoir. I think it's kind of it's like, um it seems like the facsimiles are, not some of them are more like, they're not necessarily, like, happy. I think because they know they're
No,
facsimiles.
I mean, and Mael slash Alicia eventually gets to this point too, but, like, they have the memories of their real counterpart, plus the, like, influence of what the paintress has painted them to be.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so I mean, like, as when you get towards the end of the game and you finally kill Renoir's facsimile, he's kind of like alluding to like what the paintress made him, or like the paintress made me feel this way about this and that way about
Right.
that. Like, you don't really understand it as he's delivering those lines, but in retrospect, you kind of you understand more what he's saying. But
Totally.
yeah, so he's like not a happy camper, if that's what you're getting. Like,
Right.
they're kind of miserable because they're holding like the truth of the fact that what they're that they're not real, quote unquote. I
Mhm.
mean, right? But I think that's a question the game asks too. Like, because this all exists in a painting and it's been created by the painters, does that make these people in their lives, are they trivial, or are they
Right.
not real,
Right.
quote unquote?
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
And it's and that yeah, that is because it's like, in our world, there's often that philosophical question of like, are we living in a simulation? Well, even if we
Mhm.
are, that doesn't necessarily mean that what we experience isn't real or worth something. Like our entire world is truly on the precipice of, like, a meteor could hit Earth tomorrow. Like this could all be taken away in an instant. So there's this entire world that exists inside of a painting. That painting could be destroyed at any time. But isn't our real world just as fragile? Like, that doesn't mean they're not real people with real feelings, or that their lives have no meaning. So, anyway, like, that's just one line of thought to go down with this. But anyway, so the character of Verso, in the outside world, he has died. A facsimile of him has been recreated in this painting, and he has basically been trapped in this painting for, like, 70 years, um, knowing that he is a replacement for someone who was loved and is being grieved and is gone, but
And
who is
he's like
not.
trapped. He's not able to age
Right, he can't
or really
age,
die.
he can't die. He can't leave. Um, he has no real family because as a facsimile, it's like he's kind of grown into his own person. So these parents who are grieving him are not grieving him. They're grieving a person who is gone, and he is
Mhm.
here now and
And
had no desire.
he can't even really go just, like, join society because this gamage
Mhm.
happening for all these years, like, he's it's a whole thing when the expedition meets him, and even when they meet Renoir, when they first get to the island, and Renoir's, like, a visibly middle-aged man, and they know nobody past the age of 33 should be alive. It's, like, very surprising, and Verso's, like, he probably appears to be in his, like, 40s.
Mhm.
Um like, clearly older than everybody else, so he can't just go, like, live in Lumiere and, like, have a life because he's
Right.
not getting gamaged, so it
Yeah.
would just be a thing he has to try to explain.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
And he
he
has to
just
lose everyone he's ever loved slowly over and over
Mhm,
again.
mhm, yep,
So, when Gustav passes on, Verso joins your party. And I think right away, there's the fact that all of the weapons that you used to be able to equip on Gustav now can be equipped to Verso. The kind of like Gustav's build was kind of like very like charging up and then releasing a powerful attack. And Verso's skill set kind of works in the same way, where you build up a stat called perfection, and when you get to max perfection, you're able to just like unleash these crazy overpowered moves. And he kind of looks a little bit like Gustav.
Mhm.
And so what I feel like was so tragic about this character is that at every level, he is a stand-in for someone that the characters actually are feel love and attachment and grief for. He enters the party as a stand-in for Gustav, who is gone and who the party yearns for and wishes they could have back. In his family, he's a stand-in for the real Verso who passed away, and now they are, you know, trapping this other version, because they can't process their grief on the outside world and let go. For Mael, um, he kind of becomes a new in terms of their relationship, they kind of take on like a brother-sister relationship. And when Mael learns who she really is, she too begins projecting onto him, this, idea that, oh, like as brother and sister, they can have the relationship they never had in life. They never able were able to continue having in life. But Verso, that's he's not him, the person who's gone. Um, and you eventually learn that there's this little boy that you encounter throughout the game, like a little shadow boy.
Just a little
And
shadow boy.
you see that he's very sad and he is basically trapped by the paintress. And by the end of the game, you realize that this little boy is Verso,
Yeah, the
and
piece of his
the
soul that's stuck in the
exactly
painting.
the piece of his soul that's stuck in the painting. And all that Canvas Verso wants to do is let that little boy stop painting and be free to move on instead of being trapped by all of these people whose love has warped into a kind of prison. And so at the end of the game, you are being given a choice. Mael and Verso manage to defeat Renoir. They push him out of
Well,
the
first
canvas.
they defeat the paintress and push
Well,
her
yeah,
out. Then they realize that Renoir intends to destroy the canvas anyway, now that
yes.
Aline, the mother, has been pushed out. And so, you end up fighting Renoir because you don't believe that like Mael's position is that, well, everybody in this canvas shouldn't be allowed to or shouldn't be destroyed simply so that
Mhm,
you can wall this off, like, and close off
mhm,
your grief, right? Like Renoir's argument seems to be that like it's not healthy for this painting to exist at all because it's always going to be a
mhm,
temptation for everyone to go to and that we need to put this behind us and like you and your mom, Alicia and Aline need to stop engaging with this painting entirely, like, it's not good for you, and therefore, I'm just gonna destroy
mhm,
it, and it won't exist anymore, and then it'll be, like, out of sight, out of mind, and my L/Alicia's argument is like, "No, this is still an important thing to remember Verso by, like, and to have this piece of him, um, but so we shouldn't destroy it, but I understand what you're saying, like, it's not healthy for us to be in here forever."
mhm,
Like, that's what her argument is right up until you finish the fight with Renoir, and he finally is kicked out of the painting. And then the other shoe drops.
yes, because yes, so the other shoe drops, like, Verso finds his inner child and
Mhm.
has the opportunity to move on, which means that if his inner child stops painting, that also means that the world will cease to exist because this world was his world that he created as a child. And so if that piece of his soul moves on, then that the world disappears as well. And he realizes that he's tired of maintaining um this isolating fantasy and being a prisoner in a world that loves a version of him that doesn't exist anymore. And it's, I don't know, in my interpretation, it's incredibly lonely for him. and it requires like the price of maintaining this world is like the eternal imprisonment and suffering of a person. So like what is that? On the other hand, Mael in this world, she's kind of been able to become this idealized person version of herself. In the real world, her family is so fractured. They don't talk to each other. They don't really even seem to be invested in her as a person. She's kind of ignored because of the injuries she sustained from the house fire. She has trouble talking. She feels insecure. Um, and for her to give up life in the canvas means to re-enter this world where she's not able to be the powerful leader and, princess, like they call you learn late in the name Mael means like chief or princess, and she really kind of embodies that. And it's really difficult for her to step back and let go. And even though she told her father, like, oh, I just want to stay in here for a little while longer, um, Verso kind of confronts her and is like, "We both know that you're lying. Like, for you to stay here indefinitely is just gonna recreate the cycle that your mother did, where you're wasting away on the outside world and not processing the grief and not reaching like, you're a painter, you can continue to create worlds, you can be
Mhm,
whatever you wanna be on the outside world, like, go do that and let me
mhm.
go." And so at the end, the game is like, "So, who do you agree with more? Do you
Because this
wanna"
family refuses to go to therapy, and all they know how to do is have giant flashy boss fights with each other that are
Yeah,
a lot of fun to play anyway. I guess the therapy session would be less fun for players. Um, yeah, you have to get in a fight.
you gotta
Mael and
fight.
Verso.
Mhm. I think something I really liked was that I think that there are valid arguments to be made for both sides. I
Oh,
think
I
what it
think I'm
came
sorry.
down
I
to
thought I thought I didn't wanna steal your thunder. You choose in that moment whether you wanna play
yes.
as Mael or Verso, in which whoever you choose is ultimately who's gonna win the fight. Because
Mhm.
if you pick Mael and then you don't win the fight, then you
Game
have to
over.
redo the fight. Yeah, game over. So,
Yeah,
you're choosing which of these perspectives you wanna fight for.
yeah. So, I chose Verso,
Mhm.
and the reason for that was just that I cou I think for me, it was seeing him interact with his inner child and seeing the weight of this world falling on that child, and this I like, you know, uh, we re just sorry to get, like, super personal for a second, but we recently had to let go of one of our cats, Oliver, who had been in my partner's life for, 15 years, had been in my life for almost 8 years. He was a beloved member of our household, and, um, he was declining over the past several months, and it was really hard to know when was the right moment to let him go. And near the end of his life, the conversation we kept coming back to was like, like grief is really more about those who are living. Like in my opinion, like it's hard to keep going. Like when someone has passed, they've gone away. They're not suffering anymore. If that like for our cat, like he was clearly in pain, he was clearly tired, he was clearly like he was happy to be with us, but his quality of life was not there. And the difficulty in letting him go was more about, like, us really struggling with having to go on without him and having to deal with the reality that, like, life ends. And so I think seeing this story play out in the game, I was just like, how selfish is it that all of these people are forcing this character to continue living trapped in a world he can't escape, forcing a piece of his soul to keep holding on because they can't do the difficult work of living in reality and moving on. At the same time, it's like there's this whole other world of people that have sprung up inside this microcosm, and so it means they have to disappear as well. But for me, it was really difficult to justify the eternal suffering of one. I don't know, it was like this really fucked up trolley problem where it's like, everyone else gets to be happy, but I have to live with the knowledge that one person has to suffer tremendously in order for this world to go on, when he's repeatedly said in every way possible that this is not what he wants. He does not want this. So, like, damn, I couldn't live with playing God in that way, and, if
Well,
his decision was to move on, I had to respect that. That was my thought.
either choice you make, though, you're playing God. So,
That's true.
I chose my L, and I chose my L in that moment because we'd just come off the Renoir fight, and I guess what I was, chafing at in both the Renoir fight and then Verso almost immediately, like, we get on the other
Mhm,
side of that, and then he's like, "Alright, I'm gonna fight you now too because this canvas needs to go." Is there's so much dialogue, in particular from Renoir, but Verso echoes a bit of it too when you get to that point in the game of, like, so there's this whole backstory with the family of, like, Aline, the mother, was a painter first. She taught Renoir to paint. It's her talent first and foremost, and, she was the first person who had this ability, and she taught Renoir and the rest of the family how to do this. And here's Renoir, like, basically saying, like, the concepts and stuff that she taught me, I'm now basically employing against her. Like, there's whole conversation that
mhm,
happens between him and Mael, where she's like, "Well, why don't you trust mother that, like, this she's working through this in her own way, and you disagree with it. Maybe it doesn't look healthy from your perspective, but, like, you don't have any trust for her that
mhm.
she's doing this for a reason that, you know, it just seems like nobody's fucking talking to each other, right?
Yes.
Which is part of the setup of the game, I get it. It's not really a complaint, but, like, that was how I was feeling as I was going into that moment. It was like, I made that joke, like, everybody needs to fucking go to therapy. Like, they need some grief
Mhm.
counseling in this household, and they all need to
Yeah.
talk to each other. But instead, what is happening is the mom has disconnected. Alicia's a shell of herself. Clea, the sister, has, like, just thrown herself into the war and isn't
Mhm.
processing anything. And the dad just wants to bury it all under the rug and pretend it never existed so everybody can go back to normal. So
Mhm.
literally none of these people are handling their grief well. And so I just
Yeah.
thought it was a bit too much for me to stomach, like, getting over that hurdle with Renoir and pushing him out of the painting and finally getting him to concede that, like, his choice to just, like, simply destroy the canvas was perhaps not the correct one, and then for Verso to turn around and basically be like, "No, but actually we need to destroy the canvas because you're not gonna let this go." And I was just like, "Could everybody fucking pause for 2 seconds?" Like,
Yeah.
I know for Verso it's been, like, 50, 60, 70 years, but Mael basically, I mean, it's been, like, a week, really. I guess it depends on how much, like, other stuff you do, but, like, for her, like, in terms of realizing who she is, getting hit with all
Yeah.
the memories of that, recognizing what's going on in this painting,
Mm.
it really hasn't been a lot of time for her to process anything. So for me, the initial ask of, like, "I just need a little more time," like, made
Mhm.
sense. Now both of the 2 endings, because I played through the Mael ending and then went and looked up the Verso ending, and I know you did the same in reverse, like,
Mhm.
both of those endings are, as you put it in our text thread last night, Clair Obscur. They're, do you wanna say it's like the dark and the li
Just includes, yeah, both light and darkness. There's no obvious, like, good ending or bad
yeah,
ending.
yeah, it's not clean cut, it's intentionally they both have a lot of shades of gray and that somebody gets hurt in both of those endings. And in the
Mhm.
Mael one, it's, like, really fucked up. She just forces the facsimile of Verso to continue to exist, and that lives many, many years, it seems like, and they
Yeah.
bring everybody back, like, Gustav is back at the end, like, and just creates the whole fake world, and she's just living in it fakely and
Mhm.
continuing to hide from her grief and not processing anything, and it's dark. I also
Mhm.
felt like the Verso ending was pretty dark too because they show the family goes out to Verso's grave together, like in the quote unquote real world, like the whole family of painters goes out, but they're still not talking to each other. They all just
Mm.
walk separate ways at the end of that scene, and Mael is left behind just standing there quietly, like still seeming like she's not. There wasn't anything in the
Mm.
depiction of that ending. Well, first of all, you have to watch all your different party members, like, come and say goodbye to Verso as they're all
Yeah.
being killed by his decision as
Yep.
well, which keeps it from being a
That was
really
rough.
clean, like, you could have
Yeah.
had and I don't necessarily think like, this is obviously what the writers were going for, but if they wanted to have, like, more of a bow on an ending and really say, like, grief is fucking hard and part of it is letting go, and having, like, that really clean message of, like, this is a game about how hard it is to let go of the people we love, but why it's ultimately necessary. They could have had that really clean message if that didn't also result in the death of an entire
Yeah,
civilizations of people, like, there's mass genocide that occurs because
totally.
Verso can't continue,
Mhm.
and he's valid for feeling that way, but personally, I feel like if that much hangs on your existence, then I mean, yeah, I don't think we can sacrifice. I
Mm.
mean, like, if we're turning this into real world extrapolations, which is not, it's a video game, but this is what it's meant to make us think about. Like, we can't like, would should we really sacrifice civilizations because this one dude is miserable? I don't know, I don't think probably. So, I almost think, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I think it's, like, a failing on the writing's part, because I think what they were trying to do with the Verso ending, after seeing the Mael one, which I think is the darker of the 2, I do think the
Mhm.
Verso one was supposed to be the quote, unquote, like, right or, like, slash, like, more good ending, but it really muddies it that that also results in all the people who lived
Right,
within that painting dying so that he could have relief, because he's right that they need to let him go, and it's
right.
valid that he would want his soul to move on and to not exist anymore, and that's all, like, I think a really strong and important message to bring through in the game, but when you tie his existence to the existence of this entire world and civilizations, it makes it way more complicated to be like, "Well, he should be allowed to die." It's like, "Well, sorry, buddy, but, like, we're talking about wiping out hundreds, if not thousands of living beings
Right,
for your sake." That doesn't
right.
seem right either.
Like, it feels like it calls into question, like, what is a person? Like,
Mm,
are these folks who live in the canvas, are they real? And are their lives worth as much as the people on the outside? I have to
mhm,
say, seeing the funeral scene and the family still continuing to be shitty, I was kinda like, "Well, fuck these people." I like, why should an entire world be snuffed out just because these folks won't go to therapy? So, like, I definitely related to that, and it felt like I agree, it felt like from a writing angle that we were supposed to see Verso's ending as slightly better, but it made me think about, like, that kind of sci-fi question of, like, are simulated people real people? Are artificial like, at what point like, if we were to kind of relate it to the topic of artificial intelligence, like, in the sci-fi definition, not ChatGPT is not a person. Everyone who's, like, having psychosis because they got too close to ChatGPT, please, it's not a person. But, like, in the world of sci-fi, these literal artificial people who have been created by this power, like,
mhm.
are they real? And I think it's a harder question to answer than the game kind of posits there at the end,
Yeah, yeah.
because 'cause they're
But
not
I
aware that they're artificial.
yeah, but I like, I mean, I just love that the ending surfaces that much. I think it's cool when
Yeah,
a game can, like, bring that much out of it and,
yeah,
like, have us having these conversations and thinking about that final decision.
yeah,
And I think it did what they wanted it to do, because I think it ties back to the title. I think they wanted both of those endings to feel shitty in a real way, even though you could see the validity in both of those decisions.
yeah.
So, I don't know, did you have anything else with the ending that you wanted to touch on?
No, it's yeah, it's a real head scratcher.
Real quick with the romances, since you missed these options. As Verso, you can romance either CL or Lune, 2 different members of your party. The CL option comes up first. It's literally just in one of the conversations that you're having with her. I think it's like to get to relationship level 4 or 5, you have a conversation and she's like, "I thought maybe we could go on a little adventure together." And you like adventure and just a little bit of like a wink, wink, nod, nod. And
Mhm,
then you can either be like, yeah, I'd be up for that, or turn her down. If you say you're up for it, then they start fooling around. It's nothing like you don't really see anything and it's not like anything too deep. They're kind of just they're fucking around because everybody in this game is hot as fuck, and so
Do you
they're all
see
about
them
to die.
kiss?
I don't even think you see them kiss. No, I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember, but I don't think you do. If you pass that up and turn CL down, you can eventually, much further in the relationship progression, start a relationship with Luna. But I don't
Hmm.
know what that one because I jumped right on that opportunity to hook up with CL and did not look back. But yeah.
Word.
So we've been going for like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Do you have anything else to say about Clair Obscur?
I think that covers it.
Yeah, I think we covered it. All right, time is up for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. If you want more Pixel Therapy in your life, come check us out at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can sign up for free to stay up to date on everything we have going on, find an archive of all of our content, and even read occasional blog posts about games we don't find time to talk about on the podcast. You should also check out and subscribe to the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@pixeltherapypod, where you can find the live recordings of all of our episodes, as well as an archive of our past streams. And be sure to support the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That stuff is just as important, and we appreciate it just as much.
Finally, since we like to put our money and our energy where our mouth is, we end every episode with a recommended side quest. As always, please check out tinyurl.com/op Olive Branch. Operation Olive Branch is a grassroots collective effort to amplify Palestinian voices and their GoFundMes. You can visit that link, tinyurl.com/op Olive Branch, to learn more, or visit their Instagram page at Operation Olive Branch.
Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That is our show for today. So go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats, and don't forget to hug an NPC every now and then. We'll be back oh so soon with some more
Pixel
Pixel
therapy.
Therapy. Bye-bye.